Okay, fingers crossed. Hopefully this is now working. Give me a second on YouTube. And I'm just going to get it connected onto, let's go live here. Okay, right. Hopefully this is now working. Fingers crossed. Technology always seems to let me down on the first live stream every year, but hopefully now we are good to go. So let me just double check on my laptop over here to make sure that I am live on YouTube. I believe I am. Hopefully you guys can hear me clearly and everything is good to go. Okay, perfect. Yes, it is working. And on those of you on TikTok, welcome along. And I highly recommend, especially if you're a student, that you're hopping onto YouTube, because on YouTube, I'll be able to draw whatever I need to draw, as well as the fact that I can get you to see my screen at the same time. Yeah. Right. Firstly, thank you guys very much for sending an avalanche of questions over the last couple of weeks in regards to the paper one exam. Just to clarify a few things about this session before we start. So first and foremost, whilst there's a huge amount of overlap between different exam boards, this is very much specific to Edexcel with regards to exam technique. Now, content-wise, there is huge amounts of overlap. So those of you that are not doing Edexcel, it is still worth your while in terms of absorbing the theory and going through how to answer questions on the topics, but your exam technique may vary. So please do bear that in mind. Right, let's go. Our starting point is to do some basic mathematical, well, not basic, some challenging maths questions, which was out in a video that we put out yesterday. So let me start by sharing my screen and sharing, in particular, the January 2009 paper. So here we go. Let's share screen. And yeah, right. So if you've not seen our website before, bit of a plug, you really need to use our website for your revision. So under resources, A-Level Economics, especially those of you that do Edexcel, we've got booklets of questions broken down by topic. I'm sure some of you by this stage would have used them. Right. In my opinion, mathematically, one of the most challenging questions they have ever set was in January 2009, question number 4. I recommend highly that you have a calculator to hand if you would like to kind of go through this question with me. So here we go. January 2009, question number 4. Okay, right, let's zoom into the actual question itself. The question says the following. It says, a mobile phone company has 2 million customers for a package of services. Each customer pays a monthly fee of £25. The company conducts market research and estimates that the PED for this package is -2. If the company reduces monthly fees by £5, the change in total revenue is likely to be, right, there's a lot going on here. In your exam, it's very important that you underline or highlight the important parts of a question so that your eyes are drawn to them. So here, clearly, 2 million customers is pretty important. The fact that they're initially paying £25 and that the PED is -2. Now, the other thing is that they reduced the monthly fees by £5. To clarify, that is not that they cut the price all the way down to £5. It's a common mistake. They cut it to £20. So we have a variety of different options in terms of what the change in revenue is going to be. What I want to do, so I will unshare this and instead share my board now, is take you guys through a systematic approach so that you could follow this as almost like a prescriptive guide. So let me share my screen to my board now and take you through it. Right. So hopefully you guys will be able to see my remarkable screen. Here we go. Right, let's skip the new page. Right, the key features of the question were that they were initially charging £25. They had 2 million customers, and they conducted that the PED was -2, and they were cutting their price by £5. Okay, right. Let's lay this out step by step, one thing at a time, yeah? Now, because I'm trying to work out the change in total revenue, it makes sense to start off with the initial total revenue. So let's work out what that is. So initial TR. Well, do you guys agree that in order for me to calculate any firm's revenue, the amount of money that a firm makes, there are 2 things I need to know. I need to know the price they charge for the good they're selling, and I multiply that by the number of sales they currently make. Well, initially the firm is charging £25, and they have 2 million customers. Now, I highly advise you guys not to write million with 6 zeros, just too long. Write M at the end, and then you'll know it's in millions. So what do we have? Very easily, they make £50 million to start off with. Nice and easy. Step 2. If I ask you guys to tell me the formula for PED, I suspect every single one of you would now know what that is. So the formula for PED is percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. But the one addition is that we know what the PED is. It tells us in the question that the PED for this firm is -2, which, as a bit of revision, by the way, makes it elastic. You ignore the sign and you only look at the number to determine elasticity. It's greater than 1. Yeah? Nice and straightforward. Okay, now of the two variables available to us, which of them do I have enough information to be able to work out? Well, do you guys agree that I can determine the change in the price? So what do? So percentage change in price. Whether you do maths, don't do maths, percentage changes need to be done in the following way every time. New minus old divided by old times by 100. So what is the new price? Well, the new price is £20. So I go 20 minus the old price, which is 25. And I divide that by the old price, which is also 25. And I times it by 100. Right, those of you that have a calculator, you can plug that into your formula now. And you should hopefully be receiving a number of 20%. They've cut their price by 20 minus 20. Yeah. It is imperative, by the way, you plug it in that order, because if you didn't, you would have got a positive number and it changes everything. So minus 20. In other words, we worked out that their price is going down by exactly 20%. Cool. Let's now plug it back into the formula. What do we have? So step 4, we have percentage change in quantity demanded divided by, now we know the percentage change in price is minus 20. So minus 20 is equal to -2. Okay, very basic maths. What I need to do is take this to the other side of the equation, so it does the opposite function. So if it was a division, it obviously now becomes a multiplication. But remember to plug it in with the numbers in terms of the sign. So there are two negatives here. So what do we have? Step 5 is percentage change in quantity demanded is simply equal to -2 times by -20. What does that give me? Well, that gives me plus 40. And this is a great checkpoint. This is a great way for you to just check that what you've done up to now for a question like this makes sense, because economics is meant to be logical. Well, if a firm reduces its price, as this firm has done, what would I expect to have happened to their demand? Well, naturally, their demand should be going up. Well, what do we work out here? We said, look, the demand for this firm is going up by exactly 40%. In other words, does that make sense logically? Yeah, it completely makes sense. So therefore, 20% decrease in price, 40% increase in demand. Step 6. I now have enough information to tell you what the new demand will be. But before that, can I do a really quick, almost like GCSE maths type of revision session quickly to make sure you guys are really comfortable with increases in percentages and decreases in percentages? Ignore the question we're doing for a second. Let's just ignore it for a sec. Imagine I told you that the initial number was 73, and I want to work out a, let's say, 12% increase on the number 73. How do I do that? Well, if you remember from GCSEs, you're simply going to do 73 multiplied by, now because it's an increase, it's going to be 1 point and then whatever the percentage is. In this case, 12%, so 1.12, and that'll give me a 12% increase. Okay, let's do one more number for increases. Let's say 62, and I want to do a 28% increase. Again, very straightforward. What do? I go 62, and I multiply it by 1.28, yeah? Right, what about decreases? Decreases, simple. So let's say we have 99, and I want to do a 4% reduction on 99. Again, I take the initial number, so 99. This time I multiply it by 0 point, and then 100 minus whatever number is the percentages. So here, 100 minus 4 is obviously 96. So 0.96, 0.96. Okay? Right. If you now know how to do increases in percentages and decreases in percentages, this step hopefully becomes pretty straightforward. So what do? So let's get rid of all of this. And we go, okay. The new quantity demanded, new QD, is equal to, well, the initial number of customers the firm had was 2 million customers. So let's do 2 million multiplied by, and now it's a 40% increase. There is a 40% increase in the number of people buying the mobile phone services. So we are going to basically multiply it by 1.4, which is equal to what? If you do it on a calculator, you should be getting 2.8 million customers. Again, just do it as an M. Right, do I now have enough information to tell you how much revenue the firm now makes? Well, yeah, I do. Because step 7 is now new TR. I need two things to determine the revenue a firm makes. I need to know the price they charge, and I need to know how many customers they have. Well, the price they charge is now £20, so that's £20. And the number of customers they now have, we just worked out, is 2.8 million, which gives me a simple answer of 56 million customers. And if you recall, by the way, the question was asking us to determine the change in revenue. Well, they used to make £50 million. They now make £56 million. The total revenue has gone up by £6 million, which was option A on the multiple choice. Those of you that wrote that under the comments yesterday, well done. Those of you that didn't understand it before, hopefully that's really clear in terms of how to approach it step by step. Yeah. So it's a nice little warm up to get us in the groove. Let's do one more, or two more mathsy type questions, and then I'm going to jump into 25 markers, 15, 12s, 8s, the whole shebang. Right. Let's have some fun. Let's now go to the following. Right. Google Chrome. Here we go. Right. So, in terms of the new spec, I think the most challenging mathsy type question they've asked was the June 2018 paper, question 4B. So let's open it. And let's have a look. Where are we? Oh no, I lied. It was 2019. That's terrible by me. Right. Okay, here we go. Nope, I went past it. The first bit, pretty straightforward, forget the multiple choice. So what we have now is it says the following. It says, following the demerger, Go Compare announced in 2017 a profit of £17.5 million. So I'm going to write that down on my board so that when I basically share my screen again. So profit in 2017 was £17.5 million. And that was up 21.5% from the year 2016. Their total revenue in 2017 was £75.8 million. So 2017 rev TR was equal to 75.8 million. And that was up 4.1% from the previous year. Okay, right. And now it says, calculate using the information provided the total cost of Go Compare in 2016. Now, some people misread this, by the way, in the exam and thought this is the easiest question in the world. Surely just minus total revenue by the profit, and I've got my total cost. No, because that was 2017. They wanted to work it out for 2016. So this is, to be fair, I think pretty challenging. So we need to basically work our way through this to understand how to answer. So let me share my screen again. And let's do the maths together. Right, I don't annoyingly have a calculator, so I'm relying on you guys to actually tell me the math as we go along. Okay, here we are. So here was the information that they gave you in the question. And you need to work out the total cost in the year 2016, so the year prior to this, okay? Right, first things first, let's work out what the total cost would be in 2016. Now, ignore this question for a second. Remember how I said to you that if I have a number, let's say 44, and I want to determine a, let's say, 21% increase on 44, what do I do? Well, I simply go 44 times 1.21. Do we agree? That would give me a 21% increase on the number 44. Now, the thing is I do not actually know what the revenue or the profit is in the year 2016 yet. That's what I'm trying to work out. I'm going to call it P. So let's call 2006 profit as P. But what I do know is that it's going up by 21.5%, and that number will equal £17.5 million. Okay, so how do I do a 21.5% increase on whatever that P is? Well, I simply multiply it by 1.215. Do we agree? And we know that that definitely equals 17.5 million. Again, do it as just the letter, like just the right M, right? Million at the end of the answer. Yeah? Okay, if that's the case, then I want to work out P. I need to rearrange that formula to make the subject of the formula P. Very straightforward. P is now going to be equal to 17.5 million. And I divide that by 1.215. Right, whatever that is, that's going to give you the profit in 2016. Cool? Let's do the same thing now for total revenue. Well, total revenue is going up by 4.1%. I don't know what the revenue was in 2016. That's what I need to work out. So we go revenue R times by, and it's going up by 4.1%. Now, be careful. The most common error that people make is they write times 1.41. That is not 4.1. That is a 41% increase. That is not what we're looking for. So we're doing 1.041, and that is equal to the number 75.8 million. Easy. Rearrange the formula again. So what we have is R is therefore equal to 75.8 million divided by 1.041. Again, whatever that is going to give you the total revenue. Some of you guys are kindly writing it on YouTube, I think. So yeah, whatever it is. Yeah. Now, what I need you now to do is you go, okay, well, think about what the formula for profit is. Well, profit is simply total revenue minus total cost. Very straightforward. I now have the two variables. So whatever we got for P would be there. And whatever I got for R would basically be there. In order, therefore, for me to get the total cost, I rearrange it. So it's like taking this to that side and this to that side. So you're just going to do whatever the revenue was minus the profit, and that will give you the cost. And those are your 4 marks. Yeah. In fairness, that is, I'm making out like it's really straightforward. That is not straightforward. But I need you to understand how to answer that in case they ask a question like that again. That hopefully, again, probably the most challenging mathematical type of question that you're likely to face for Edexcel. Okay, one more question, and then I promise I will move on from all the mathsy stuff and actually do some economic theories. So I created a little table. I'm going to recreate it over here. So we have the following. Imagine they give you price in, let's say, pounds. Like that. And we're going to say, I don't know, quantity of, I don't know, pens. Let's do pens. Quantity of pens sold. And they give you an extra column that is completely blank, obviously for your working out, yeah? And then you have the following information. So 18, 16, 14, 12, yeah? And we have 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, and 7,000 pounds. Oh, so 7,000 units, sorry. Okay, right, these are some pretty expensive pens at 18 pounds. But anyways, and the question now says, what is marginal revenue if the firm cuts the price from 16 pounds to 12 pounds? So what is MR when they go from 16 to 14 pounds? That is the question that you're asked to work out. Okay, first things first, you need to understand what the formula is for marginal revenue. And it's a very straightforward formula. So marginal revenue is just going to be the change in the total revenue divided by the change in the quantity, the output. Now, the reason why we say basically marginal is 1 more unit is because normally we go from, let's say, 10 units to 11 units. So that's for that extra 1 unit. How much revenue did you get from selling 1 more unit? Now here, though, we're not operating in 1 units. We're going up in like thousands, right? So let's figure out what we need to do. In order for me to work out the total revenue from 16 to 14 pounds, what I need to do, sorry, not 14 pounds, actually, make it harder. Make it 12 pounds. Make it a bit more exciting, yeah? What I need to know is I need to know what was the total revenue when they were selling pens at 16 pounds. How much money did they make at that point? Compared to when they cut the price to 12 pounds. So this, I'm going to populate with TR. I actually don't need to know what the revenue is at 18. I don't even need to know what it is at 14. The only thing I need to know is at 16 and at 12. So let's do it. Total revenue, as we did in the previous question, is simply the price multiplied by the quantity. So 16 times 5,000. If my maths is not like malfunctioning, I think we have 80,000 pounds. Okay, so the amount of money they initially made is 80,000 pounds when they sold pens at 16 pounds. They now sell pens for 12 pounds and make 7,000 sales. How much revenue do they make at that level of output? Well, they make 84,000. Right, I absolutely guarantee you that one of the options, probably if you got this as a question, will probably be 4,000, because someone would basically be like, oh, it's gone from 84 to 80. No, the change in total revenue is 4,000. I agree. Yeah, the top of the fraction is 4,000. But I need to divide it by what? The change in quantity. Well, how much has quantity gone up by? Well, the quantity has gone up by exactly 2,000 units, from 7,000 to 5,000. So I'm dividing it by 2,000. And that, hopefully, very basic maths, gives us the marginal revenue is exactly equal to 2 pounds. Is that clear? Hopefully that is pretty straightforward. Nice and easy? Okay, right. Let's get out of kind of section A territory and delve into some of the more challenging questions. Now, you know what? Every single year, whenever I do these sessions and I invite people to ask questions or I invite them to email questions in, the most common question I get by absolute mile is, what are your predictions? Oh, what are your predictions? Right. First things first, I do not do predictions, nor do I think anyone should do predictions. I will hopefully prepare you guys for such a wide range of topics that realistically a handful of them probably will come up in some format, whether it's a 15, a 12, or a 25. But anyone that is relying on predictions and revising based on predictions, with all due respect, that is the stupidest thing that you could do. Yeah. So I purposely am not calling it predictions. I am basically taking you through as many questions or hot topics, if you like, or things that I think are usually, like, you know, are big questions that could be examined. And that way, hopefully, no matter what comes up, like last year, you guys will be fine. Right, first question that I want to take you through is mergers. I want to make sure that you guys understand mergers. And in particular, if you get a straightforward question, what to do with mergers, and if you get a slightly more challenging question, what you also do on mergers. Let's start with the more straightforward question. The more straightforward question is just like a 25 marker or a 15 marker on the effects of a merger. Yeah, no specific thing specified in terms of efficiency or consumers or producers, just a merger. How do we deal with it? Well, the first thing I always want you guys to talk about when it comes to horizontal integration. So firstly, what is horizontal integration? Well, horizontal integration is where two firms who are operating in the same industry and at the same stage of the production process merge with one another. A good example of that is Jaguar merging with Land Rover. So two car companies, they both sell cars, they both manufacture cars, and they merge to become one single company. What are the benefits to those firms? Well, one of the easiest things that you could go down is to talk about how they are better placed to tap into significant economies of scale. Now, as you should all know, economies of scale is where a firm's long-run average costs are going down whilst their output is rising. Now, I can draw this in a very straightforward way, and it works like this. So imagine if this is the average cost for a particular firm, and if they were initially operating at this quantity over here, Q1, well, do you guys agree that the average cost, so the cost per unit, is somewhere over here at C1? Now, when they get bigger, and I'll talk about why in a second, they operate somewhere over here. They might be operating at what's called their MES. And again, we're going to talk about this in a sec. So Q2. Okay. And that at that quantity, the cost is much lower. Why? Because one of the things they can now do is because they're selling more cars, they can bulk buy more of the raw materials that they're going to need to manufacture their cars, which is obviously known as purchasing economies of scale. Nice and easy, yeah? So as a firm grows in size, one of the benefits of that growth is that they can tap into enormous economies of scale, like purchasing economies of scale. That will be my first analysis. But let's talk in terms of how you get the depth required to go from an A to an A star. 25 markers, it is not about how many points you construct. That is a common misconception. I don't want you to actually make loads of points in your essays. In fact, you're going to do 2 analyses and 2 evaluations plus a judgment. Here, my depth is derived from basically taking you through some really simple terms, one thing at a time. Number one, first thing I would do is have a really clear topic synthesis, something like one effect of the merger is that it increases productive efficiency. Right, what is productive efficiency? Well, productive efficiency is where a firm is operating at the lowest point on its AC curve. At that point, by the way, MC is equal to AC. I'll revisit that later. That'll be my topic sentence. That'll be the clear overarching point of this paragraph, yeah? Or it could be that the firm just becomes more efficient, make it even broader than that. Then you talk about how they're able to tap into economies of scale. You can then define economies of scale. I then want you to give me an example of an economy of scale. So I'd always do purchasing if I was you guys. It's just very straightforward, yeah? Once I do that, I contextualize it with an example. Again, this counts as a real world knowledge, by the way. So if I'm saying something like the car companies are now better placed to bulk buy raw materials such as steel and rubber, that is real world application, really easy real world application. Now, because it's a 25 marker and only the 25 marker, now as a 50 marker, you're all good. You're basically going to do the next chains of reasoning that I'm going to do in a second. If it's a 25 marker, I would add a second economy of scale into that paragraph to give it even more oomph and depth. And the one I would probably do here, it's up to you. You probably know loads of economies of scale. The one I would do is financial economies of scale, which is the idea that a firm, as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, they can now go to the bank and take out not only a bigger loan, but a bigger loan at a lower interest rate. Think of it in terms of the following example. If I go into the bank and I ask for a £1 million loan, am I going to get a £1 million loan? No, I'm not going to. Let's say they were crazy enough though. They gave me a £1 million loan. Would the interest rate on that loan be high or low? Well, obviously the interest rate on it would be extortionate. It would be really, really high because I'd be seen as high risk. Let's say as soon as I leave the bank, lo and behold, Jeff Bezos walks into the bank on behalf of Amazon and goes, hey, Amazon would like to take out a loan of £1 million. Are Amazon going to get a loan of £1 million? Obviously, yes. And the reason why, and is the interest on that loan going to be high or low? The interest on the loan will be very, very low. And the reason why is because they know that Amazon are going to pay it back. They really badly want Amazon to take out the loan through them and not through another rival bank. In other words, big companies like Amazon, they not only take out bigger loans, they take them out at lower interest rates. And that low interest rate is your average cost. That is your cost of production, basically. Yeah? Anyways, I basically developed the paragraph now by saying, oh, they can also take advantage of financial economies of scale, give an example, say that these loans could be invested into new technology, which can further decrease their costs. Now we show off. And the way we can show off is we go, okay, because of the fact that they are now operating closer or operating further down their AC curve, the firm is now operating closer to its MES, which stands for minimum efficient scale. Just a really fancy way of saying the bottom of the AC curve, by the way, the minimum amount of output that you need in order for you to fully tap into your economies of scale. So on my diagram, it's basically there, yeah? And then I can do the following, and therefore the firm becomes more productively efficient. Now let's say, just like in the June 2018 paper where they asked the 25 marker about the benefits to consumers of monopolies like Apple. Or let's say the June 2022 paper where it was about Tesla and it talked about whether monopolies are efficient. Yeah. If it's specific to the consumer, how do I go from that to the consumer very easily? And this is what you guys need to understand, that even if you construct your entire paragraph focusing on the producer, it's very easy to now go from there to talking about the consumer. And simply put, you just say that, oh, well, the lower costs for the firm may be passed on to consumers in the form of lower prices. And therefore, allocative efficiency also goes up. And now you've answered the question. And now that is a monstrous paragraph. That is so much depth, and you're flying now. That is your first analysis. If you get a merger question, that is the one I would argue is the one you should just start with almost instinctively. Evaluation, really straightforward. The evaluation, really straightforward, is to say that they might experience diseconomies of scale. The firm actually might become so big that they might be operating somewhere over here. And one of the issues is they might experience something called managerial diseconomies of scale, which is where basically the firm becomes so big that it's like a breakdown of communication between the various operations. Within that, now on the mark scheme for Edexcel, they have this as a separate point. I'd combine it together, especially in a 15 or 25. They might suffer from something called cultural clashes. Cultural clashes basically means that the managers just don't get on. They start to basically have loads of internal bickering and just everyone's annoyed at each other. And as a result, the merger in the long run might result in a demerger. Easy peasy. That's your first eval. Second, analysis. Again, really straightforward. Second analysis is going to be about the profitability of the firm and how they're going to generate a lot more profit. So let me just show you guys what we're going to do. Now, if you haven't watched my video on YouTube of how to construct diagrams, cost and revenue specifically, I mean all the diagrams, there's loads of different videos and diagrams, step by step, you need to do that before Wednesday, more important than anything that you do before that exam. There is nothing more important than you being able to not only do your diagrams accurately, but quickly. And this step by step will change how you do your diagrams. Right, this is what we're going to do. So here's our diagram over here. Okay, right. Quantity and then just cost slash revenue over here. Every time you're going to draw a cost and revenue diagram, I always want you guys to begin by just simply drawing a firm making supernormal profit. Really straightforward, yeah? So the way we do that is we start step one, which is just an MC curve, and that's MC. Step two is AR and MR, so start on the same point on the y-axis, although actually, you know what? Undo, I did a silly thing there. You'll find out why in a second. Don't start too high up on the y-axis for this particular one, because we're going to basically shift it in a second. So AR equals D, MR is half the slope, so it does something like that. Margin revenue. Profit maximization is the next step. So profit maximization is where MC is equal to MR, so that level of output there, that is how much the firm is producing. I then go up from that quantity until I hit the demand curve there, and that's the price P1. And simply now I put the average cost. So the average cost is going to be somewhere below so that I make supernormal profit. So let's make it somewhere over here. Did you notice, by the way, I purposely put my pen on the bottom, on the MC curve and flicked out either side just to ensure that that is the lowest point on the AC curve. Nice and easy. Right, then your most important point on your diagram by a mile is your quantity. If you have the output the firm is producing, you can tell me everything about the firm. You can tell me the price they charge by going up to the demand curve, consumers, and you can go up to the AC, the average cost curve to determine the cost. So if I go up from Q1, take the AC curve there, that is C1. Right, now, I do not advise you guys to shade in the supernormal profit area in the exam unless it's a static diagram, meaning that it's not shifting. If it's shifting, which is going to be a case here, do it in terms of letters. So we're going to go A over here and B over there. So our initial supernormal profits are P1, A, B, C1. By the way, those of you that are on TikTok and asking where the diagram is, if you go on the YouTube channel, it's on live and you'll be able to see me sharing my screen. I unfortunately can't share my screen on YouTube yet. Annoying. On sorry, TikTok yet. But yeah, get onto YouTube and you'll be able to see me drawing. Yeah. Anyways, right. So our supernormal profit area was initially P1, ABC, ABC1. Cool. When two firms merge, do you agree that the firms are now going to have more market share? And if they have more market share, that simply means that they have more customers. And if they have more customers, do you agree that the demand curve is shifting outwards? Now, when AR shifts, can it shift in isolation? Well, no, AR cannot shift by itself. AR must shift with MR. They always move together. It is impossible for AR to shift without MR. The easiest way to depict that on a diagram is just simply start at a higher point on the y-axis and draw a parallel shift for me. So we're going to go AR2 equals D2. And again, over here, sort of like there, that is MR2. Okay, Again, we now need to go through step by step. So the first thing we need to work out is the amount the firm is producing. How much output do they produce, yeah? So the firm starts, it's where MC equals MR2 now. MC equals MR2 is here. That is the output level that they operate at. What price do they charge when I now go up from my new quantity to my new demand curve? So that's AR2. So we have all the way up there. That's P2. And then finally, I need to go up from Q2 until I hit the AC curve. So from Q2, I hit the AC curve, C2. Right, and again, the letters and area, that D and E, I know my letters, by the way, I've skipped the letter C on purpose because we use C's over here. So it's just to be easier to like do it in that way. Right, now, before we discuss this diagram, something interesting happened on my diagram. It didn't have to happen. When you draw this, your cost may have stayed the same. Your cost may have gone down as it did on mine, or your cost could have even gone up. Why did my cost go down? And it's important for you to know why, because in a 25 marker, you could draw upon this if your first point wasn't this anyway, yeah? It was my first point, by the way, that's a massive clue. But basically, the firm, because they are bigger, are now tapping into larger economies of scale. So in other words, they've gone from that point over there to that point over there. As they got bigger, they were able to bulk buy more of their raw materials, right? And that is depicted on my diagram. Now, if your cost basically stayed the same, it's all good. That's fine. It just means that your AC curve was fairly flat. If your average cost, or if your AR and MR shifted out so much that your cost went up, you're experiencing diseconomies of scale. Still fine, by the way. It won't affect the answer because in the end, profits are still clearly going up. So let's determine what happened. Prices for the firm went up. Output, the sales, also went up. And the final thing is their profits also went up. Such an easy paragraph now. Because now if I say that their profits have gone up, I simply now talk about what they could do with the extra profits. Well, their profits can be invested into new technology. And again, this is an opportunity for you guys to add in some real world knowledge. Real world knowledge really does not need to be some facts and all these like crazy stuff that you've like researched in advance. You can even make up stuff within reason. So for example, here, if I'm talking about two car companies merging, well, I can talk about how they can invest the profits into self-driving cars, or they could invest their profits into improving their electric car range. I don't know, the coverage of electric cars, the range of cars, whatever. Do that though, because that counts as application marks. And then finally, we wrap it up by saying, therefore, the firm becomes more dynamically efficient. It's also, by the way, good for the consumer. If I was about the consumer, consumers are better off because they're getting a better quality product, a wider range, and also. Yeah? Clear? That is the second analysis. Evaluation. The evaluation is to talk about how actually they might majorly exploit consumers. And the reason why consumers might be majorly exploited is because of the fact that they now have less choice. The firm has more monopoly power. To clarify, by the way, them having more monopoly power does not necessarily mean that they're a monopoly. Monopoly power means they have the ability to set prices. Yeah. And as a result, the issue that consumers now face is that demand becomes more price inelastic. So if demand becomes more price inelastic, they now know that if they raise the price, it results in a less than proportionate decrease in demand. Therefore, allocative efficiency is likely to go down. That is the second analysis evaluation. Really, really straightforward. All good? That is how to answer that question in a nutshell. Right. Let's deal with a slightly harder question. A slightly harder question is the impact or the effect of it if it was a conglomerate integration. Now, a lot of the points actually overlap a fair amount, yeah? So let's go through what you do if it's a conglomerate integration question, whether it's a 15 or a 25 marker. What is conglomerate integration? Well, conglomerate integration is basically where a firm merges with another in a different industry, okay? So if, for example, when Virgin bought Northern Rock, which was a bank, that was their route into the financial services sector. They had no presence in the financial sector before that point. That is an example of conglomerate integration. Right, the analysis if this is a 25 marker. Number one, the best point is the fact that conglomerate integration allows a firm to diversify their risk. What that means is that if there's a downturn in one industry, it's not fatal. They can cross-subsidize from other areas where they're making profits. Now, if this were your 25 marker in the exam on Wednesday, the example I would give to explain that concept is Virgin, and in particular, Virgin Airlines versus Virgin Media. Think about what happened during COVID. Obviously, because of travel restrictions, Virgin Airlines and other airline companies took a massive hit. The demand would have dramatically increased for their services. True? So I could draw a diagram, by the way, with AR and MR shifting inwards and them going from profits to losses. Now, standalone airline companies like Monarch and Thomas Cook, they collapsed. They went bust. Whereas Virgin Airlines survived. Now, how do they survive? Well, one of the ways they survived is the fact that Virgin Media are likely to have experienced an increase in demand. Why? Because people were at home. Therefore, they wanted better TV packages. People wanted better fiber optic internet because they were working from home, etc., etc. You obviously just explain that and contextualize it. And now you can actually draw two diagrams in that first analysis, by the way. One with Virgin Airlines, AR and MR shifting inwards, and one with Virgin Media. This one would be Virgin Media. It would be AR and MR shifting outwards. And you talk about how this is great for them because not only do they survive by cross-subsidizing, it now means that when the market returns back to normality, as it has, just by surviving, Virgin just literally managing to just stay afloat in Virgin Airlines, they now have more market share because others who couldn't do this have shut down. That is an amazing analysis. That is a great, great opening analysis in terms of why diversification is really useful and what it is, and real world example as well. The evaluation to that. The evaluation to that is actually rather than spreading their risk, you could argue that conglomerate integration results in an increase in their exposure and therefore exposes them to more risk. Think about why. Imagine you inherit or you basically merge with a company in a declining industry. Now, what is a declining industry? I mean, they haven't done this in real life, but you can give this as your example. I would argue the cinema market is a declining industry. Last year's paper was all about Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney Plus and all that stuff, right? Why? Because a lot of people now are watching streaming services. So if you, for example, bought into a cinema chain, even if it's like a thriving cinema chain, like let's say View, might not be the most sensible acquisition, most sensible merger, because now if you have that firm under your arm, in the long run, that's going to be very loss-making. And suddenly now it's almost like bleeding profits from the entire business. You're constantly having to move money from the profitable area to the loss-making area. Bear in mind as well, you might lack the expertise to know how to run that particular industry. So completely new industry for you, right? So therefore, you could talk about how it exposes you to more risk. And also as a result, the profits that the firm was making, so here, Virgin Media, you know the profits they're generating because of the increased demand? It is not invested into improving the quality of Virgin Media. It's going towards keeping afloat that failing business that they now have. That's a problem as well because within the Virgin Media industry, Sky and other companies are now catching up to them. They're now in a position where actually they might start losing market share in the industry that they were actually thriving in. Wow, evaluation. Amazing. Yeah? So that's the analysis, that's the evaluation. Second analysis, easy peasy, economies of scale again. And now the two economies of scale that I would do, purchasing sort of works, but I feel like the two that make more sense for conglomerate, number one would be marketing economies of scale. Marketing economies of scale is the idea that when a firm is basically in multiple different industries, let's say again, Virgin, when they run an advertising campaign for, let's say, Virgin Airlines, yeah, or Virgin Active, if they run that marketing campaign and it's successful, it actually enhances the brand image and kind of brand recognition for Virgin as a whole. Therefore, they don't need to necessarily run multiple different campaigns for all the different entities that they have, one campaign, and therefore their costs are dramatically reduced. That's one, economy of scale. Second one in terms of, again, because it's 25 market, by the way. Because it's 25 market, I'd also do financial economies of scale. The firm is now so big that when they go to the bank to take out a loan, they can turn around and be like, look, we're in multiple different industries. We've diversified. So they're more likely to get bigger loans, lower interest rates. And again, they can invest these to make the quality of their goods really, really good. The evaluation to that, evaluation could be major levels of X inefficiency, that they might start to become really complacent because of the fact that they're so big. I'll actually, you know what, let me quickly draw the X inefficiency diagram. It's a very basic diagram. And can I explain what that is as well? Because it's slightly different to productive inefficiency. So here we go. So here is just a standard average cost curve for the firm. Now, to draw X inefficiency, you simply just pick any level of output. Pick any random quantity like here. So let's say Q1. Now, do you guys agree that if this was the output the firm is producing, I simply dot up until I hit the AC curve, and that should be the cost that the firm is incurring. So let's label that as point A. The issue, though, is that because of a lack of competition or because of like what's called managerial slack, like basic complacency, they start to incur unnecessary costs. So their cost ends up being actually up there. That's their actual real cost, C2. Therefore, they are X inefficient by that distance there. The X, by the way, represents a number. You'll never be asked to calculate what that number is, but that's what you need to understand, is that their average cost could basically be at C1, but in reality, it's at C2. And as a result, they're incurring unnecessary costs. Sometimes it's because they overpay managers. It could be because I mean, there's a really random example. I think it was an Educast paper, actually, or like the specimen paper. There's an extract about Amazon's headquarters and how they spent something like £100 million getting this ice polar bear sculpture for their main office. Like, yeah, whatever. Like, you wouldn't do that if you were like in a competitive market. So that makes sense. That is an easy evaluation that you could do. Another one, by the way, is obviously managerial diseconomies of scale. Firm is too big. Managerial kind of conflicts and issues that arise. It's so difficult to coordinate and determine where your budget should be across the entire business because you're in so many different industries now. And that is how you do a 25 marker on conglomerate integration. Okay, cool. Mergers, can I tick off? Let's go to our next topic. To deal with our next topic, I want to tell you guys about the locked specimen paper. And there is a 12 marker in there, which I want us to basically have a set answer to. And the set answer, or the question is going to be this: assess the factors necessary for the success of a cartel. So, assess the factors necessary for the success of a cartel. Okay, cool. Let's start with this. First and foremost, what is a cartel? Well, a cartel is where two or more firms collude with one another, which begs the question, what is collusion? Collusion is where firms, rather than competing against each other, work together to fix an artificially high price. And the way they're going to do that is by restricting their output and therefore behaving as if they were a monopoly. Right, can I just actually explain this in a very simple supply and demand diagram? I wouldn't draw this, by the way. This is just for you to understand. So if I have a simple supply and demand, and if I think of this in terms of, let's say, I don't know, the supermarket industry, where this is Q1, this is P1. Right, the supply curve is made up of all of the sellers of groceries, which is basically predominantly the supermarkets and a handful of maybe newsagents and whatnot. Yeah? Okay. Now, do you agree that if the big supermarkets all restrict their supply, that will impact the supply of the industry? That is the curve that they have influence directly over. They can influence the supply curve because they are the suppliers. And if they shift supply inwards, what that does is it causes the price to go up. Okay? So that's basically what collusion is going to be. It's going to be where they work together to restrict supply and behave as if they're not an oligopoly anymore. They are a monopoly. Cool. Now let's answer the question. And if you get this as a 12 marker, this is your set answer that I always want you to write for this. The first factor necessary for the success of a cartel is that it must be an oligopoly. The market has got to be an oligopoly because think about why. If we're dealing with something like monopolistic competition where it's made up of thousands and thousands of sellers, maybe hundreds of thousands of sellers, do you guys agree that realistically it is virtually impossible to organize a collusive agreement where thousands of sellers all agree to restrict their supply? There's no way that you're able to do that. Whereas if there are only 5 big sellers in the market and all of us now restrict our supply, well, now, yes, I can influence the supply curve easily. Therefore, the first thing that I need to do is understand that it's not, by the way, it obviously will be an oligopoly. They're not going to ask you a question about a cartel if it's not an oligopoly. So you now just basically show evidence that it's an oligopoly. What is the concentration ratio? How many big firms are there? In particular, who has to be part of this cartel for it to be a success? The biggest seller. In other words, Tesco, if it was about supermarkets, have to be part of the cartel because they have the most influence over the supply curve. That is your first condition. Nice and easy. Evaluation. Evaluation every single time is something called prisoner's dilemma. Let me go through what prisoner's dilemma is, and I'll show you a payoff matrix that I want you guys to almost memorize and put into your exam if you get this as a question. For example, by the way, June 2022, they had a question where it was like, I don't know, Pilgrim's Pride or something like that, and then wanted you for Edexcel to draw a payoff matrix. Anyways, right, let's make up an example. So let's go. So one of the people that asked me a question as an email, Ella, a bit of a shout out for you. So here's Ella, and here I am over here. Yeah. And let's assume that what happened is Ella and I have committed 2 crimes. The first crime is a fairly petty crime. It's not too serious. The second crime is a far more serious crime. But the police don't have enough evidence to charge us for the serious crime. They only have enough evidence to charge us for the more petty crime. So what they do is now they put us into 2 separate cells. And they say to Ella the following. They go, look, if you confess and Ahmed doesn't confess, you, Ella, will get immunity and he's going to get 10 years prison time. If, on the other hand, you don't confess and he does, then he's going to get immunity and you're going to get 10 years prison time. In the event that both of us confess, we both get 5 years prison time. And in the event that neither of us confess, well, they can only charge us for the more petty crime, and that, therefore, will only be 2 years prison time. Right. We can map this out on what is called a payoff matrix. And this is what a payoff matrix will look like. So we have the players, we have confess, and let's just write DC for don't confess. Confess, and again, DC or don't confess. Okay, right. If you remember, I said that if both of us confess, we both get 5 years of prison time, yeah? Now, because prison is obviously not a good thing, let's do it as a minus number. So we go -5, -5, yeah? And then in the event that Ella doesn't confess, oh, by the way, just to clarify, the left number represents the utility or the outcome for the player on the left, and the right number is for the player at the top. Cool? So now, if Ella does not confess, and I do confess, well, what happens now is she gets 10 years prison time. Because I confessed, I'm going to get nothing. I get immunity. Well, if I now hop over to this square here, well, obviously, it's just the reversal of that, because now she's confessing, so she's getting immunity, 0, and I am not confessing, so I'm getting 10 years prison time. Finally, if we both don't confess, then we basically do -2, -2. All right, cool. Let's work out what the outcome of this particular game is, yeah? Now, if we looked at this game, between the 4 options, imagine you don't know me and you don't know Ella, which is clearly the best option for us collectively. Do you guys agree that clearly the best option by an absolute mile is this, -2, -2? If you could pick one outcome for us, this would be the outcome of the game for us, right? We're going to prove that that is never, ever the outcome of the game, and that we never, ever reach don't confess, don't confess. And the way we do that is by playing the game. So if your other examples, by the way, Edexcel as well may require you to do this as a multiple choice, but especially those of you that are AQA and Educast, if you're watching this, you may be expected to work out what's called the Nash equilibrium, which is basically the outcome of this game. This is how you do it. You're going to imagine yourself as one of the players first. So we're going to go, all right, let's play as Ella, yeah? And we're going to go, all right, imagine Ahmed is playing confess. So we're only dealing with this row here, or this column, yeah? What is better for Ella to do if I play confess? Is it better for her to confess and get -5, or to not confess and get -10? Obviously, it is better for her to get -5 than -10, so she's going to confess. I'm going to underline her better move. Still playing as Ella. And now we go, all right, what if Ahmed plays don't confess? So if he is there, is it better for her to confess and get nothing, or to not confess and get -2? Obviously, it is better for her to confess and get nothing than to get any prison time. Did you notice something? Ella played confess regardless of what I did. It made sense for her. She has what is called a dominant strategy. Confess was her better move regardless of what my options were. Whatever I did, it was always better for her to confess. Let's now play the game as me. And we go, okay, imagine Ella's playing confess. So we're now dealing with this row over here. Is it better for me to confess and get -5, or to not confess and get -10? Well, again, obviously, I'd rather get -5 than -10, so I underline my better move. It's better for me to confess. Again, if I am playing as me and we pretend that she's playing don't confess, so we're over here, is it better for her to confess? Oh, sorry, is it better for me to confess and get nothing, or for me to not confess and get -2? Again, obviously, I want to get 0, therefore I confess. I have the exact same dominant strategy that she does, which doesn't make sense, by the way, because of the fact that I would also like to confess and not get basically 10 years prison time. The outcome of the game then is what is called a suboptimal outcome. We basically both play confess, and that is the issue. Right, let's now redraw this. So again, those of you that are joining late on TikTok, if you join on YouTube, everything is there on my pad. You can see what I'm showing my screen. So hop onto YouTube and you'll be able to see. Right, the payoff matrix that I want you to basically almost memorize and just adjust based on the circumstances that you face. If you're given numbers, obviously use the numbers they give you. But let's do it from the perspective of Tesco and Asda. So Tesco over here, Asda over here, okay? And we're going to go high price, low price. And again, for Asda, high price, I'm just going to do high and low to just save time, yeah? High, low. So, right, and let's say this is the revenue that they make in, I don't know, millions of pounds. Okay, let's make our life nice and easy. And the thing about making our life nice and easy is why we're just simply going to like have simple numbers that are easy to remember. If both Tesco and Asda collude, in other words, they both pay high price, let's give them 100 million pounds of revenue each. Nice and easy. And now we go, okay, if Tesco undercuts and they play low price while Asda remain in the collusive agreement and pay the high price, what must happen is Tesco must win and Asda must lose. So let's make, again, nice and straightforward. We go 200 for Tesco and 50 for Asda. Tesco have gained. They get £200 million revenue. Asda have lost. They make £50 million of revenue. Nice and easy. The other point here then is the opposite. So you just now flip the numbers over. So we go, okay, so 50 over here and 200 over there. Nice and easy. Therefore, the only thing that's a little bit more challenging is the last one, which is actually going to have to be the outcome of the game to illustrate prisoner's dilemma. We're going to basically make it so that they end up playing low price, low price. Yeah? And all you need to remember is that the number needs to be between this one, where they lost out on, and what they would have got had they colluded. It needs to be lower than what they get if they collude, but higher than what they're going to basically be when they undercut what they get. Nice, easy number for you guys, 75. We're going to go 75, 75. Now, just to not kind of waste time, the outcome of this game, if you play it back later, will be this. It will be that they both basically play low price, low price. They can't trust each other. And so even if they are in a cartel, the cartel typically starts to break down in the long run. This is the evaluation every single time we're dealing with collusion. Every single time the question is in relation to cartels, price fixing, collusion, you basically now say, however, games such as Prisoner's Dilemma illustrate that cartels tend to break down in the long run. This is because there is always an incentive for one of the firms to undercut the other to gain profits at their expense. And then you can, if there's a 25 marker, now draw this. You don't need to, by the way, unless the question explicitly says it, for a 12 or a 15. Just as an FYI, you could explain this in words, and simple as that. Cool? That is a phenomenal, by the way, evaluation. Let's do our second analysis. Second analysis in terms of what you need in order for a cartel to be successful is that the demand for the good that they are selling has got to be price inelastic. It has to be. Because think about why. If something is elastic in demand and we now decide to raise the price of that particular good, what will happen? Well, if something's elastic in demand, demand drops, but not just a little bit, dramatically. The fancy way of describing that is the increase in the price would have resulted in a more than proportionate decrease in demand for the good. Therefore, your revenue would end up falling. If you're going to get less revenue, would it make sense to collude? Well, of course not. Therefore, the demand has to be inelastic. And again, it obviously will because they wouldn't be forming a cartel otherwise. So in the lock specimen paper, it was about countries colluding when it came to oil. Well, is oil inelastic in demand? Well, yeah. Why is oil inelastic? Because most factories still run on oil. Most cars still run on oil. You just give examples of why demand is inelastic. Again, supermarkets, it's inelastic because there's a lack of choice. The market is highly concentrated. Therefore, you're kind of restricted in terms of where you buy your groceries on a weekly basis between maybe 4 or 5 big chains, right? In other words, is demand inelastic? Absolutely yes. Is it possible for them to collude? Does it make sense for them to collude? Totally makes sense for them to collude. And as a result, it results in the increase in the price would result in a less than proportionate decrease in demand and therefore higher revenue for the firm. That is our analysis. The valuation is a really straightforward question in the long run, whether it's still going to be inelastic. Everything in the long run starts to become slightly more elastic, by the way. So you basically say that, oh, well, the demand is likely to become more elastic in the long run and justify why. Oil is likely to become more elastic because of the fact that more alternatives are now starting to basically emerge. The extract was literally about, by the way, like shale gas and shale oil and whatever. People are starting to switch to electric cars. They might start to cycle more and use public transport. I don't know, whatever, right? In terms of Tesco and supermarkets, the reason why demand might become more elastic is because actually, if they are colluding, new firms might enter the market. They might represent an opportunity for new firms to come in and maybe online delivery services, Ocado, and these companies might start to basically get more market share, etc., etc. Something will happen that will make the demand slightly more elastic. Cool? Right. Really quickly, before I move on to another topic, I want to show you guys a past paper question. And it is the June 2015 paper, Unit 3, so old spec. Let me just stop share and share this instead. Right. So, back. Right. If you, by the way, gone through loads of past papers for the new spec, the old spec is still very relevant to you guys, just so you're aware. It is very useful for you to revise. I'll obviously amend the number of marks to fit your kind of new spec now. But here we go. June 2015, number 9C or D. I think it's 9D maybe. Let's have a look. It's here, 9C. It says the following. Discuss why price fixing and anti-competitive behavior by foreign formula milk producers in China may have been possible. Right. I'm going to tell you the answer, but what I want you to work out straight away is what is this question actually asking? What is this question? You know, I'll give you like 30 seconds to try and work it out. Let's see. Well done if you understood why I just showed you this question. What is price fixing? Price fixing is basically collusion. This is the exact same question that I just did a second ago. It's the same thing, it's just worded differently. And this is what you need to understand. There is a thread. They often repeat questions on a yearly basis. Example, if you look at the June 2017 paper, the 10 marker, so 6C, it basically has a question about irrational behavior and information gaps. In fact, you know what? Really quickly, let me just show you. So if I go to paper one and I go to June 2017, what this? Paper one, June 2017, 10 marker. Here we go. It says the following. It says, assess the extent to which information gaps and irrational behavior are the main causes of food waste in the UK. Okay, cool. Really quickly, can I just whiz through what that answer is, by the way? So this is one of those where the data is very helpful. It will help you to answer it. But irrational behavior, there are only 4 theories that those of you that do Edexcel need to know. Number one is basically habitual behavior, that people are in the habit of doing something and continue to do it, even if it doesn't maximize their utility. Within that is a very specific thing called inertia, which is where you know, for example, that the thing that you're doing is bad, or you know you could, for example, save money, but you basically would rather stick with what you know rather than switching to like another company, yeah, or like going through the hassle of what you perceive to be the hassle and risk of switching to another company. That is the first thing. So inertia. And by the way, inertia, especially who exhibits inertia? Well, the elderly tend to exhibit a lot of inertia. They are very, very scared of change. So that's one theory. Second theory is herding. Herd-like behavior is basically that people follow the crowd, right? That big time happens when it comes to things like stocks. People basically see the price of a stock going up. They don't really understand what's going up, and they go, "Oh, it's going to go up again," and they buy it, and then it goes down. So, anyways, that is herding behavior. Number 3 is that you have unrealistic expectations regarding how you're going to behave in the future. By the way, that really, really helpful for the question that was asked last year. June 2023, the 10 marker was about whether basically why they were acting rationally. Netflix subscribers, were they acting rationally? So your analysis is, yeah, they're rational. Evaluation, irrational. And the reason why in the extract, it spoke about how, you know, that kind of when you're about to finish an episode and it shows like watch next kind of feature, or like it's going to go to the next episode. They mentioned that in the extract. And that's there to get you to act irrationally because you go, oh, just one more episode, just one more episode. And then eventually you're like 5 a.m. and you're still watching you finished the whole box set. So anyways, that is irrational behavior where you have this perception that you're going to behave in a certain way in the future. By the way, that majorly answers the question here because you know when the supermarkets give offers like buy 2, get a third free. And let's say your normal consumption habit is that you buy 1 unit every single week and you consume 1 unit. But you see the offer, you go, oh, buy 2, get a third free. Wow, let me get the second one. You go and now buy the second one, get the third one for free. But because your normal consumption habit is to buy and consume 1 unit, you end up only consuming 1 unit. What happens to the other 2? Well, they are contributing to food waste. That is answering the question nice and easily. Yeah. Number 4, the last one, by the way, is computational problems. Computational problems is the idea that basically people suck at maths, to put it really bluntly. They can't assess all the information and make informed decisions because there's just too much kind of going on. There's too much maths for them to work out. Cool. That is the 4. All right, now that we basically whizzed through kind of behavioral economics, this question then, your first analysis would be it is irrational behavior because of the fact that people have unrealistic expectations about how they're going to behave in the future. And so they make irrational decisions today, like consuming more than or buying more than they're going to actually consume. Second analysis for this, because you had to do 2 analyses for this, by the way, because it also says information gaps. Information gaps, people didn't know how to in the extract store their food properly. There was also an information gap when it came to the supermarkets ordering food from the suppliers. Because if you're Tesco, you can't with 100% accuracy know how many potatoes people are going to want next month. So what you do is you overorder. You'd rather have more than less. So they overorder, especially because they're buying in such large quantity. And therefore, a lot of it ends up going to waste. Easy peasy. Yeah? Now, quick word on... so let me show you actually June 2019 then. So that's June 2017. Watch this. June 2019. 10 marker. With reference to extract C, assess possible reasons why many landline-only customers do not switch to a cheaper telephone provider. What is this? It is literally the exact same question. This was slightly harder because they didn't explicitly tell you, by the way, that it was information gaps and irrational behavior. It's the same answer though. It was that older people tend to exhibit inertia, which is the idea that even though they know they could save money by switching, they stick with what they know because they're kind of scared of change. They're scared to make the decision or kind of go through the process of switching to another provider. That's inertia. That's habitual behavior, basically. Yeah, that's one. And information gaps, people may not even know that they're being exploited. They might not know what the different prices are in the market for telephone providers, and therefore they might basically lack the information to make the informed decision. Cool? Right. Let's talk exam technique when it comes to 10 markers, but also 12 markers as well, by the way. One of the common misconceptions is that you need to always do 2 analyses and 2 evaluations. Not true for Edexcel. For Edexcel, if the question says reasons, like this one, because it says reasons, so that is plural, yeah? Or if it explicitly says 2 things, like it did in June 2017, so information gaps and irrational behavior, yeah? Then, on that basis, 1 second, hold on. Why is this making me do that? Verify to continue. Yeah, okay, cool, right. First time I do TikTok Live. Anyways, basically, if it says 2 reasons or gives you 2 different factors, you have to do two analyses. Of course you do, yeah? If it doesn't, though, so if it says like last year's question, assess whether Netflix subscribers are acting rationally, 1 analysis in decent detail will suffice. And all the time in a 10 marker, 1 well-developed evaluation will always suffice to get you the 4 marks. I need you to understand that 10 markers, there are 4 marks of evaluation. 1 well-developed evaluation is more than enough, yeah? And therefore, that is always what I need you to do. You need to be saving time on certain questions. I don't want you to waste enormous amounts of time on a 10 marker because the 15 marker is worth more, the 25 marker is obviously worth more, yeah? That is the first bit of advice that I offer you guys. Second bit of advice is the biggest cheat code ever, which is this. And this is why earlier today, when I was doing this session, I talked about how you guys need to genuinely go through my video and make sure you know how to draw cost and revenue diagrams like that. Because if you're lucky enough in paper 1 or paper 3 to get a 12 marker like this one, where it explicitly says use a cost and revenue diagram in your answer, you now need to understand that you just need to identify what the cause of the shift of the cost of revenue curve is, quote the data, obviously to show the evidence, draw the diagram, by the way, draw MC or AC or MR and AR shifting out or just AC shifting, explain the diagram, that's it. That is 8 marks of analysis. It's simple as that. I don't need to do anything more than that. You're going to get 8 out of 8 analysis by just doing that. And that should save you a lot of time. You'll be able to get 8 marks in far less than 8 minutes. And then because of that, by the way, normally, again, one evaluation will suffice to get the 4 marks if you do it well. But because of the fact that you save so much time drawing the cost and revenue diagram, if you've practiced it, you can actually now do 2 evaluations. Can I again show you repetition? I want to show you guys how repetitive these questions are. Starting with June 2017, paper 3. Let's have a look together. Right, so let's have a look. Where are we? June 2017, paper 3, question 2C. Has the following question. So here we are. The question says, discuss the likely impact of the national living wage on the profitability of firms. Use a cost and revenue diagram in your answer. Okay. First things first, because it's explicitly stating that I need to draw a cost and revenue diagram, I automatically now know I'm dealing with 1 detailed analysis because the diagram will do a lot of heavy lifting here. But let's talk about the national living wage. The national living wage is a top up, and it tells you this in the extract, so you don't even need to know this. But the national living wage is a top up on the minimum wage for people above the age of 25. What it was in the extract, it is now, by the way, above the age of 21. Very recently, they changed it to be above 21. Anyways, whatever. Minimum wage is a minimum a firm must pay its workers on an hourly basis. Now, one of the most common kind of debates that takes place when it comes to wages and labor is whether labor is a variable or fixed cost. The mark scheme actually allows you to do it as either. I personally think, though, the better answer is to the variable cost. And the reason why is because now if you have to pay each unit of labor a higher wage, every single unit of output now becomes more expensive to manufacture. You therefore now draw me the following. So you start off by going, this is the living wage, this is the definition. You basically quote from the data. The data, by the way, says that wage costs are going up by 0.3%. You say that labor is an example of a variable cost, and therefore both MC and AC will rise. You draw the diagram, raise MC and AC, draw the new output, the new price, the new profit, and obviously profits are going down. And bear in mind, by the way, it doesn't matter whether you go from an area of high supernormal profit to smaller supernormal profit, or from supernormal to normal, or supernormal to loss. In the end, it's all the same thing. It just means profits are going down. 8 marks of analysis like that. Simple. Either. Now, again, some of the evaluations, to be fair, are generic, but some of them are specifically around the data. Well, think about it. The minimum wage or the living wage for this particular extract specifically was for people above the age of 25. What might firms therefore do? Firms might simply therefore hire younger workers. So even now, by the way, it's above the age of 21. Well, you might switch to younger workers. And if you think about it, above those type of jobs, realistically, you don't need to necessarily have a lot of experience to do minimum wage type jobs like a barista. Yeah. So therefore, very easily, they could now switch the workers to younger workers, and profits are not therefore affected. Easy. Second evaluation that you could talk about is when wages go up, so does productivity. And the reason why is because now the opportunity cost of losing your job is greater. You basically have more to lose out on if you were sacked, so you're more likely to hit targets. You're more likely to be as efficient as you possibly can. So again, that might result in firms' costs going down rather than going up, and therefore it may offset the increase in wages. Easy. The last thing, again, generic, you don't need to do three. You'll never need to do three analysis evaluations for any question. You should never do three, by the way. Is maybe they switch to capital machinery. So if this was, let's say, supermarkets might instead go, you know what, rather than hiring cashiers, let's go and get more self-checkout machines now, because relatively speaking, cashiers are now pretty expensive. Okay, that is how you deal with this. Now, okay, so now we've done that. We did, so as part of our kind of preparation, we did June 2017, paper 3. Okay, let's look at June 2022, paper 1. And let's see if we can see a thread. Is there anything similar to what we just did? Let's wait for it to load. Right, here we go. 12 marker. Using a cost and revenue diagram. Ah, thank you, Jesus. Discuss the likely impact of rising costs for coffee shops on their This time they went even further. They're like, you know what? In case you guys are stupid, here's the answer. Here you go. Here, we're giving you that costs are going up. Just draw a diagram, yeah? Now, we need to work out which costs are rising to be able to understand whether it's just AC that goes up, which happens, by the way, if it's a fixed cost, or whether it's MC and AC going up, which is when it's a variable cost. So let's quickly look at extract A, because it literally is, what is it, extract? Yeah, extract A. It's all in one place. Here we go. By 2020, many costs were rising. Staff shortages meant wages for baristas, trained coffee makers, a 6.2% national minimum wage increase for over 25-year-olds and rising rents. Where have I heard of the 6.2% national minimum wage increase for above 20? Oh, June 2017, paper 3. Obviously, it is the exact answer. Like literally word for word, you're doing the exact same answer again. I go, here's the minimum living wage. It's an increase in wages. You specifically say now 6.2% increase. You talk about how it's a variable cost. You shift MC and AC up. You talk about profits going down. Happy days for you, you just got A marks. How easy is that? Yeah, simple. And now we evaluate. Well, they might switch to younger workers. They might hire baristas and train them up who are below the age of 25. Easy peasy. So it's the same answer. It's exactly the same thing. Nothing has changed here. That. Now, if I now go to, let's say, June 2019. Is June 2019? I can tell in a second. No, that is 2017. Well, you know what, do it the old-fashioned way. 2019. And actually, you may have seen it when I opened the paper earlier. 12 marker. Oh, happy days. Discuss one likely reason for the rise in BT's profits. Use a cost and revenue diagram to support your answer. Now, just to be clear, by the way, if you get a 12 marker and it doesn't explicitly say draw a diagram, but you shove in a diagram, that doesn't mean you can do one analysis. You now have to do a second analysis as well, yeah? It has to explicitly say draw a diagram for you to basically only need one analysis where you're just explaining the diagram. Here, by the way, again, spoiler alert, in case you wanted to do this later on, they basically merged with the EE. So BT and EE merged. What can I draw? The diagram that I drew earlier when we did mergers right at the beginning of this Q&A. AR and MR shift out. AR and MR shift out because they have more market share and they have more customers. Therefore, you can just summarize that diagram, talk about profits going up. Happy days for you. You just got the analysis marks. The evaluation, think about it. If profits are going up, I evaluate by talking about why profits may not necessarily go up or might be temporary. Therefore, I think, okay, what are the bad things about a merger? Well, one of the bad things about a merger is that they might start to experience diseconomies of scale, because the firm might become so big that they have like clashes between the different managers, cultural clashes between the two firms, blah, 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 blah. The firm might end up demerging. One. Second eval, very straightforward, is the firm might actually become inefficient. They might start to incur unnecessary costs due to the lack of competition or because of how big and powerful they are now. Did X inefficiency earlier in the session as well. Easy peasy. 3, again, you never need to do 3. But when a firm merges and they have now more monopoly power, who is going to be scrutinizing them far more? Well, obviously the CMA. And literally in the data, by the way, if you look at this extract, the one that extract C, it talks about how they're basically being forced by the regulator to reduce the value of, I think it's landline only customers' charges from $18.99 to $11.99 per month. That is the regulator literally stepping in to limit their ability to abuse their monopoly power. So maybe profits don't go up. Maybe their profits going up is just a temporary thing, and then in the long run, it just goes back down again. Easy. 12 markers are your dream question now. If it comes up as a 12 marker and it explicitly says draw a cost and revenue diagram, you should be getting 12 out of 12 every single time. Let's go do a 25 marker again. 25 marker that I want us to do is as follows. Evaluate the case for nationalization for an industry of your choice. Let's deal with it. So evaluate, I'm going to unshare all of this and instead share my whiteboard. Those of you again that are on TikTok, if you would like to see anything that I'm drawing or writing or any past papers that I'm showing you guys, go onto the YouTube channel, please. It's all being streamed there right now. Right, let's add a new page and talk about nationalization. Now, because I want to try and get through as much as we possibly can in the session, if I were you guys, as part of your revision, I would do the October 2020 paper, so one of the COVID years, paper 1. There's a 10 marker about whether nationalization protects employees, which is a bit awkward. Not a nice question for you to need to answer. Make sure you know how to answer that. If I have time, I'm going to actually allude to it in a second anyway in the analysis here, but it's a good idea for you guys to know how to answer that particular question. Anyways, let's start by describing what nationalization is. What is nationalization? Well, nationalization is where something that was privately owned is moved into the hands of the government. It could be a firm or an industry, more likely to be an industry. Yeah? So, in a nutshell, by the way, if you're stuck and you're like, I don't know, as long as you know what the definition is, this question now becomes, if you think about it, the government will become a monopoly. And the question is therefore now, what are the good and bad things about a monopoly? Simple as that. And if you have done enough past papers, this is again a question you should have already answered. 1, June 2018, the question has a 25 marker about whether a monopoly, Apple, are good for consumers. Easy. June 2022, Tesla is a monopoly with 82% market share. Assess the impact on efficiency of a monopoly. Right, again, if you've answered these, you should know how to answer this question then, because all you needed to understand is to go, look, literally, nationalization is where the government now basically own a particular industry. So easy, easy, easy. Yeah? Right, let's talk about how you would answer this. But before we do it, even though this is not the right question to illustrate this on, there is such a common misconception when it comes to 25 markers that are often perpetuated, don't name names, but certain teachers, right? Where there is this thing where they tell you that you have to draw a diagram at 25 markers. Now, most 25 markers will lend themselves to diagrams. So yeah, sure, you'll need to draw a diagram. And if there's a diagram to draw, 100% draw a diagram. However, it is absolutely not the case that you need to draw 1, 2, 3, or X number of diagrams at Edexcel to get 25 out of 25. It is not true. It's just not true. If you look at the June 2019 paper, where they asked the question about collusion and whether collusion is, why they would, there wasn't really an obvious diagram there. You could have maybe drawn a payoff matrix, but there isn't any particular diagram that you needed to draw to get 25 out of 25. So please do not, in the exam, panic. If you get a question where you do not have a clear and obvious diagram to shove in, if there is, like there will be here, 100% do it. But don't get all like crazy about the fact that you need to draw a diagram here. Unless the question explicitly says draw a diagram, like it did in June 2018, by the way, don't need to draw a diagram. Anyways, let's talk about how to basically do this. Nationalization, like we said, is where a privately owned entity or industry is moved into the hands of the government. And the industry that I would like you to do if this were to come up is the rail network. And the rail network, I'm choosing for 2 reasons. 1 is because the way I want you guys to get your real world knowledge, rather than spending hours on ChatGPT and on Google and whatever, past papers, the data response, it's all factual information. It's all real information. They haven't made it up. And because of that, you should get your information from there. And obviously, by the way, it's relevant to your exam board because they're asking literal questions about it. So use that as your data. That is your real world knowledge, yeah? Anyways, in that extract, it gave me loads of really useful information. And this is what I want us to basically do. First analysis, think about it. If a company or an industry is privately owned, what is the objective of a private company? So if you're a rail network provider and you're a privately owned company, what is your objective? Well, your objective is to maximize profits. In other words, you're going to be operating at the level of output where MC is equal to MR. That is the private sector. The government, if they take over that sector, realistically should not be wanting to just maximize profits. That shouldn't really be their priority. Their priority should be to maximize consumer welfare. And consumer welfare is maximized at the point where they are allocatively efficient. just to clarify something about allocative efficiency, by the way, two things. One, I need you guys to know what the rule is and to understand that it's always whether consumers are better off. But two, I need you to understand when to use it. And it's going to be in almost every essay you can write, which is that every time the consumer is better off, I don't care why they're better off. If it's because of the fact that they are getting a lower price, if they are getting a better quality, if they're happier, if they're smiling more, you're going to tell me that allocative efficiency has gone up. To illustrate this, and you can check this later if you want, June 2013, Unit 3, old spec, they had a question about egg farming in the EU. And it was something along the lines of that I think like the hens were basically caged before, and the regulation meant that they had to be like free range. Honestly, on the mark scheme, it has the following. It says the following. It goes, happier hens lay better quality eggs, therefore allocative efficiency has risen. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm sat in the exam talking about how happy the hen is, I am very unhappy myself. But it was on the mark scheme. And in other words, it was literally a point that you, as consumers are better off. Consumers are better off, you're going to go, allocative efficiency has gone up. But I also need you to spot it on a diagram or be able to depict it on a diagram. So the rule is MC equals AR, because AR, by the way, is the price. Okay, let's figure out what that does then. So if I draw a very basic diagram, and the diagram is going to look like this. So we're going to have cost slash revenue and quantity over here, yeah? So here's MC. And we have average revenue is equal to demand and marginal revenue. Okay, I don't even need an AC curve here because I'm not trying to illustrate the profits at this stage. I just want to show the output level and the price that they're charging, yeah? So first things first, MC equals MR is basically over here. That is Q1. And the price you get by going up from Q1 until you hit the demand curve. So that's the price the firm is currently charging for whatever it is that they're selling. So in this case, train services, yeah? But now if we go to where MC equals AR, that is allocative efficiency, well, that operates over here. So Q2, I've not drawn mine very well because it's overlapping my arm, but whatever. And the price I got from the quantity until I hit the demand curve, which hits it there. And the price has gone down. Right, our overarching point when it comes to nationalization, because quite a few of you, by the way, emailed me regarding this, is to basically say that nationalization is likely to result in high levels of allocative efficiency. And now you explain that the government would want to prioritize maximizing consumer welfare rather than maximizing profits as the private sector would likely want to maximize. And in doing so, they move from MC equals MR to MC equals AR. Two things now happen. One, do you guys agree the price of train services is likely to go down? But a 25 market is one of those questions where I need you to drag the point now. I need you to give me chains of reasoning. So wherever there's an opportunity to drag it out in black, drag it out. Give me a bit more depth. First things first, lower prices, is that good or bad for consumers? Obviously, it's good for consumers. And who in particular? It's really good for low-income households because now they can afford to go and use train services. Fab. But the second thing that you can now do is properly show off. Why? Why did I choose the rail industry as the example of what I think they should renationalize? Because the extract, if you're going to get a STEM, the more topical thing right now is Thames Water. They could be like, oh, should they renationalize that? But they'll always give you the option by the 25 marker of doing an industry of your choice. Do network, if I were you, if this comes up. Why did I do train services? I did it on purpose because of the fact that now that trains are cheaper, it improves the geographical mobility of labor. And you've got another chain of reasoning. It is easier for people to now move from one area to another. They might not necessarily need to live in London now to be able to take a train from, let's say, I don't know, Kent, to come into London to take up a job in the city or wherever, right? There we go. Nice and easy. You basically talk about geographical mobility of labor going up, but there's more. Give it more depth. Do you guys agree that the government would also provide more train services? So Q1 to Q2. And in order for the government to provide more train services, they would now need to employ more workers, which, by the way, would answer the 10 marker in the October 2020 paper about workers, yeah? That's great because more jobs are being created, like more train drivers and people that lay the tracks, whatever, right? Just do train drivers, your example. That is, all of it is the analysis, and that is excellent analysis, like super analysis. Let's evaluate. The evaluation is to drop an absolute monster of an evaluation. But I want to clarify something about this particular topic because I get so annoyed at how this topic is taught. If you are not Edexcel, this does not apply to you. If you're OCR in particular, may God help you. But basically, Edexcel, the labor market, used to be in the old spec in theme 1, used to be called unit 1. It got moved into theme 3, and for some reason, schools and exam centers had an absolute meltdown. They're like, oh my God, it's in theme 3, must be mental. So they started to basically overteach outside of the spec. So if your teacher at school has done the following, the backwards bending supply curve, You don't need to know it for Edexcel. If they've done things like, I mean, margin revenue product, I don't mind because it's so basic that it's one of those things that on the mark scheme it says it'll never be examined about it, but you can talk about it and bring it into the answer. Fine, that's fine. Yeah. But if they've done things like the monopsony labor market diagram with average cost of labor, you don't need to know that if you're at Edexcel. If your other examples, this doesn't apply to you. So if you are AQA, you do need to know that. You do need to know, monopsony in the labor market. Edexcel, your labor market is so unbelievably straightforward. It's literally supply and demand, cost and revenue diagram, etc. I don't want you to make it complicated, but you can explain concepts without a diagram. Last year, the 4-marker in section A was about why nurses in the private sector get paid more than nurses in the public sector. And the answer is going to be our evaluation to this essay, which is that the government can exert high levels of monopsony power. What is a monopsony? A monopsony is basically where there is a powerful buyer. So if I think of a monopsony in terms of supermarkets, do you guys agree that farmers, suppliers, have very little choice but to sell to one of the big supermarkets? Fair? And as a result, if you think about it, who has power in that relationship? Tesco or the farmer? Tesco obviously have the power in that relationship because they turn around to you and go, we want your potatoes at this price this month. Are you in a position to be like, no, I ain't going to sell it to you? No, because most of your sales go to Tesco. And therefore, Tesco can really kind of squeeze the price and reduce your profit margins and reduce their costs in the process. Well, here, who has monopsony power? Well, if the government nationalized the rail industry, they become a pure monopsony. You, if you're a train driver, have no choice now but to work through the government. There's no other option. Whereas before, you at least had the option of like you working for like East Coast Line or I think there's one called South Coast or whatever, different companies. Yeah, you now you don't have that choice anymore. So what is the government likely to do? The government is likely to suppress wages. They're likely to actually reduce the wages they pay the workers, maybe as a means of reducing the prices for consumers, but also because of the fact that potentially their macroeconomic objectives, don't go too macro, by the way, in paper one, your micro, yeah, might be that they want to reduce their fiscal deficit. They want to cut down on their spending. How do they do it? They go, oh, train drivers, they have no choice. Let's restrict how much we pay them. Your real world evidence, by the way, is the fact that for over like the last 2 years, nurses and junior doctors have been striking like every other week. Yeah. Have they got the wages that they've been commanded? No, not even close, right? We clapped for them on Thursdays. And then the second they went to the government, were like, we kind of want to get paid more. The government like, paid more. Hilarious. That is your evaluation. And that is an awesome evaluation, by the way, that it might be bad for workers because now the government can suppress their wages because they become a pure monopsony. Wow. That's our first analysis and our first evaluation. Let's deal with the second analysis. Second analysis is also, to be honest, wow. But I want to just talk about something in terms of theory first. It's going to be the point, but I need you to understand the concept. We often think of competition as a good thing. We think competition is great because it will lead to lower prices, more choice, a better quality potentially because of all of these things, yeah? But actually, competition in certain circumstances can be really bad, especially if it is a natural monopoly. Let me draw you the natural monopoly AC curve. It will look like this. So we have quantity over here and cost over here. Now, normally, an AC curve looks like, let me just draw one really quickly and rub it out. The AC curve normally looks like that, right? It's just like a U. However, in a natural monopoly, it has a very unique shape, and I need you to understand why it looks like this. So it looks like this instead. Okay, for some examples, by the way, they describe it as like the L-shaped AC curve. It's basically that. Yeah, okay, right. Let's think about why. Think about how much it must have cost to build the infrastructure for the rail network. Now, again, my real world knowledge, do you guys think that I know anything about the train services or rail network prior to reading the October 2020 paper? Of course not, right? I know, contrary to popular opinion, I have a life. I'm not like some fanatic, train watcher. What's that guy? Bourgeois, he's amazing though. Anyways, that guy, whatever. Right, I don't know. But I now know because of the extract, and that's my real world knowledge. And real world knowledge said to me that there were 2,500 stations across the UK. And it said that there were 32,000 kilometers of train tracks. Is that a little bit or a lot? That is a lot, right? So think about the actual cost involved in building that network to start off with. Do you guys agree the average cost is going to be crazy because of the fact that your starting point, your fixed cost is mental. It's in the like trillions of pounds. And think about what average cost is. Average cost is total cost over quantity, right? If the top of that fraction is, let's say, 10 billion, for your average cost to become even reasonable, you need to be producing so much output. And therefore, on the diagram, I'm going to show you it in the following way. So here is the market output, yeah? So this is output over here as a quantity, yeah? And this is the cost. Okay. If I was drawing a natural monopoly diagram, I would only draw the AC curve. I don't need you to draw me MC. I don't need you to draw me AR and MR. I don't need it. It's enough to do this and explain it properly. If multiple firms provide this good, do you guys agree that each firm will only have a small segment of the market's output? So they would operate somewhere over here, Q1. Let's say that's like, I don't know, 10% of the market output over here, yeah? Well, if that's the case, their average cost would be astronomical. It would be all the way up here. They are very productively inefficient. And if you think about it, because of the fact that their cost is so high, it's all the way up there, just for this firm to make normal profit, just to survive, what is the minimum price this firm has to basically charge? Well, it basically needs to be C1, true? Therefore, consumers now, a lot of them are going to be priced out. They're not going to be able to afford it. It's ridiculously expensive. Whereas if you have one single seller, one single provider of the whole of the market output, somewhere over here, Q2, well, do you agree their cost is now much lower because they can spread it out over such a large level of output? They can tap into huge economies of scale, which I'll give an example of in a second. And therefore, their cost is much lower. And because their cost is so much lower, do you guys agree that that translates into them being way more productively efficient? And do they need to charge consumers a stupidly high price to survive? Well, no. Therefore, allocative efficiency is also likely to be way, way higher as well. Make sense? Now, we bring it back to our question about nationalization. Well, you could argue the rail network very much is a natural monopoly. In fact, the 12 market, the October 2020 paper, is literally that. It's about whether the rail network is an example of a natural monopoly. In terms of your first analysis of that question, you'll be talking about the massive fixed and sunk costs. 2,500 stations, that is a lot of stations. To be able to build infrastructure like that, you need so much money. Secondly, there are enormous economies of scale. Think about it, 32,000 kilometers of track. How much bulk buying can you do? You're going to do some crazy levels of bulk buying. You're going to bulk buy so much of the steel required to build the train tracks. And therefore, if you are the sole provider of train services, you can bulk buy in large, large quantity and therefore reduce your cost per unit. You now draw this diagram, explain this diagram as I just did a second ago, and talk about how actually competition is not a good thing. And that when the government nationalized the rail network, brilliant, because costs go down from C1 to C2. Cool? Let's develop slightly more. But that's enough. That is actually a very good chain of reasoning, and you genuinely could. Like, that would suffice to get you all the marks or like to be in the high level of analysis. But in case you have time, what you now can do is this. Think about when the government, if they run the train network, do with the profits and compare it to what the private sector would do. The private sector, if they make profits, do you agree some of those profits, if not maybe all of the profits, are given out to shareholders in the form of dividends? Is that going to happen if the government are now the only provider of train services? Well, no, because now the government, there are no shareholders. We're the shareholders, I guess. They are more likely to reinvest the profit back onto the train services. Again, give me examples. Make it up. It's kind of an application. The government, I don't know, they could provide like an AC on the, ironically, AC on the trains. They could, I don't know, improve the Wi-Fi, or even some of them don't even have Wi-Fi, right? On blah, blah, blah. Just give examples. And then you're going to say that therefore it results in higher levels of dynamic efficiency. And now you just dropped an absolute bomb of an essay. Just in terms of judgment, by the way, because the 25 marker is the only question that you write a judgment for if you're doing Edexcel. Other examples slightly different for you guys. Edexcel, only the 25 marker. You are never writing a judgment in a 15 marker or 12 marker or 10, not 10. None of those. And a judgment, by the way, there is a video on our TikTok and Instagram, but just as a quick reminder, there are 3 things that I need you to do a good judgment. Number 1 is clearly answer the question. If it's like, what's better, this or this, yeah? Or if you basically provided 2 policies, say which one you think is better, or you could even say it's a combination of 2, but don't sit on the fence. Go, this is the answer, basically. To justify why, give me like, based on what you've written so far, what is your kind of like prioritized point? How did you arrive at this judgment? And I'll do this for this question in a second. And the number 3 is where you really show off. Number 3 is I want you to offer policy advice to the government or to the firm, where you say, do this, but also factor this in, or do this, but be wary of this. Example. If I were doing this question, I would start off by saying that on the balance of evidence, the government should renationalize the rail network. That's my taking a clear stance. Now, the next thing that I basically want to do is I say that the reason why. Well, the reason why is because it's a natural monopoly. And actually, again, if you read the extracts in October 2020, there's a company called East Coast Line, which basically were on the cusp of, I think they even did shut down, the government had to bail them out. So you say, look, it's a natural monopoly. And this whole thing about competition has not worked because train services have been characterized by crazy levels of strikes, inefficiency, delays, etc. You don't have to go to that much depth. So you go, it's probably a natural monopoly. Therefore, it makes sense for only one provider to provide all of the output. Then number three is my policy advice. My policy advice is going to be this. It's to say that, therefore, the government should renationalize, but pledge that whatever profit they generate from running the rail network is reinvested back onto the train network to ensure that dynamic efficiency remains high. And that is your 25 marker if it's about nationalization. Now, again, if it's a smaller question, if it's a 15 marker, a 12 marker, you guys now know. And bear in mind, by the way, that question that I just did, it was the same as asking a question about whether monopolies are efficient. It is also the same as asking if a monopoly is a good thing for consumers. It's literally the same thing. Yeah. So again, you see threads throughout the different questions. Yeah. Right. There's some water. There's my voices going. Cartel, the labor. All right, let's deal with the labor market. Let's quickly just move around between labor market and talk about something in particular that I want to make sure you know how to answer for the labor market, and a question I recommend you guys do before Wednesday for the labor market. So first and foremost, again, to clarify, Edexcel specifically. If you are not Edexcel and you're doing another exam board, you might need to know more about the labor market. The depth that you guys go into might be kind of more sophisticated than Edexcel. This is specifically for Edexcel. Right. I think that the labor market as a 25 marker in most instances is not a good question. And the reason why I don't think it's a good question for you to do is not because it's difficult, it's actually straightforward. It's because of how straightforward it is that I think it's hard to develop in enormous amounts of detail and provide a lot of depth. So therefore, I will go through a question that could come up as a 25 marker. It hasn't yet. It's been asked as a 15 marker in June 2018. And I really recommend you do this. But the question could be something along the lines of, factors or policies that could improve the mobility of labor for a sector of your choice, or an industry of your choice. Okay, let's deal with this. There are two mobilities that you guys need to understand. The first mobility is geographical mobility of labor, which is simply how easy it is for individuals to go from one area to another to take up a job. The second is occupational mobility of labor, which is how easily an individual could go from one sector to another to, again, take up a job. Okay? Right. If I got this, I think there is a set answer. And actually, it is the exact same answer that I would have done in the June 2018 paper. You know what? Let's actually open that paper. So again, those of you that are joining late on TikTok, if you go onto the YouTube channel, everything is my screen is shared, and anything I'm writing is also on my screen. So I would recommend that you switch over to there if you want to see. But here we go. June 2018. Let's have a look. 15 marker said the following. It said, so let's zoom in a little bit. With reference to extract C and your own knowledge, discuss policies businesses and is in bold, by the way, government might implement to reduce labor immobility to benefit the energy sector. Okay. Here, by the way, just a quick thing about exam technique. Make sure that you dedicate one paragraph to businesses, whatever they can do, and one to the government. Do not mix the two together. Why make your life more complicated than it needs to be? It's unnecessary. Just literally go either his businesses, what they can do, and also what the government can do. Okay, let's deal with it. Are you ready? In a nutshell, mobility of labor. This is the answer I always wanted to follow, starting with occupational mobility of labor. And education training is always going to be your go-to. Because think about it, you need to basically equip people with the skills to be able to work in that sector. Again, your real world knowledge can be derived from this. For example, the extract talks about how something like 29% of jobs, there we go, 29% of employers in the gas and electricity industry report unfilled job vacancies compared with an average of 18% across all industries. Here's your real world knowledge. So you're going to go the energy sector. You can basically improve the occupational mobility of labor by developing or basically education training. Invest into education training. And again, the extract is useful because what you can do is you can make sure that people have skills that are relevant to the specific sector here, energy. So more engineers and more technicians. And you develop that. You talk about how this therefore means that those individuals are more likely to be able to take up those jobs in the sector, fill those vacancies, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. By the way, a bit more than that though, because it's a 25 marker. Yeah. Because it's a 25 marker, I'd combine it with the following. And again, I would not have thought of this if it wasn't for this extract. The extract mentions that there's a major issue in the sector in terms of the image of the sector, because it's characterized by an aging workforce. Yeah. And it talks about how less than a fifth of the energy sector's workforce are women. So again, you can delve into that. You can say, okay, the government can make sure that they run marketing campaigns. Like, you know, those adverts that you guys see sometimes for like the Royal Navy and the Army, that's a marketing campaign to try and promote that particular sector, right? So anyways, you can basically talk about, oh, the government could do all of this as a means of trying to encourage more people to take up jobs within that sector. Yeah? Cool. That is your first analysis, and you can really flesh that out by talking about how they can target, especially females, etc. Okay, evaluation, really straightforward, is a massive time lag. Massive time lag. This is not a quick fix. It's going to take so long for people to develop skills, especially in industry like energy, because the skills required are a lot more skilled. And therefore the demand, or the supply, sorry, is going to be wage inelastic. In other words, even as the wages maybe go up, it's not going to result in a massive increase in the supply because it takes a very long time for you to actually develop these skills. Yeah, like a neurosurgeon. So if, for example, the wages paid to neurosurgeons goes up by 20% tomorrow, are you expecting a 20% or 30% increase in the supply of neurosurgeons? Obviously not, because of the fact that it's a very, very hard skill to develop. It's going to take a while for you to develop those skills. Cool? Anyways, that's your first analysis and your first evaluation. Let's deal with geographical mobility of labor. Very straightforward. The first thing that I want you to always talk about is that they can provide housing subsidies. Housing subsidies are basically where you provide like free rental for individuals that move specifically for that sector. Now, that could be the government providing it, or it could be, what's the name? Or it could be the government providing it. And because of that, people who already have the skills within the UK might be able to now move to wherever that particular job is based. Or if someone has the skills from abroad, again, they might be able to now move. Again, to develop that in more detail, you could talk about infrastructure projects to be invested into, for example, like, improving the train services to try and make it easier for people to go from wherever, like London to, I don't know, Aberdeen, where a lot of the energy sector is based, etc. Great evaluation. That actually, even with that, it may not be sufficient because of the fact of two things, well, there's three things. One is family ties. And it again says in the data that around 2/3 of the workers in the energy sector are over 50. Do you guys agree that people above the age of 50 are more likely to have a family? And if they have a family, they're going to have kids and a spouse and whatever. Is it easy or difficult for them to then relocate? Well, it's a lot more difficult for them. Therefore, even with the benefits being provided to them, even with the subsidy, they might not be willing to basically move. Cool? That's the first kind of point that you'd make. The second point that you'd make here is the fact that they might lack the language skills. So if, for example, someone is being relocating from abroad to come to wherever, again, that is something that you could basically talk about. It may not work. Number three, Brexit. Brexit might mean it's very difficult for you to actually relocate to come into the UK because of visas and restrictions, etc., etc., etc. Easy? That's the kind of thing that you look for. And again, that's exactly the same answer here, by the way. 50 marker with just less depth. Yeah? Simple. That is how I'd answer every single time when it comes to the mobility of labor. Right. Cool. Next, let's deal. I know you guys, by the way, I don't know, there's absolute chaos going on the YouTube channel. I'm just not even reading, to be honest. I have these questions pre-prepared, partly because these are questions that were asked, and also because I think these are hotter topics, not predictions, just to clarify, hotter topics. But anyways, right, okay, let's go through one last thing to kind of wrap up the session. I want to talk about monopsonies, because we did mergers, we did labor, cartel, nationalisation. Let's do monopsonies, yeah? Okay, first things first, again, there's a YouTube video. If you want to, like, it's a good idea to watch my YouTube video where I go through basically the factors you look for to determine whether a monopsony power in an industry is high. A really good paper to do, by the way, is June 2012, Unit 3, question 9C, yeah? I may show you guys that in a second. But first things first, let me just share my screen again and show you guys my board. A monopsony. What is a monopsony? Well, a monopsony is where there is a single or small group of powerful buyers. Yeah? And if you think about it, what that does is it means that those buyers can influence the market price. They can majorly push down the price they pay their suppliers. And in turn, what does that do to their costs? Well, that's going to reduce their costs, right? So if I'm Tesco and I exert monopsony power, June 2017 paper, by the way, paper 1, or June 2012, Unit 3, that means that my variable costs are going down. Easy peasy? Okay, let's depict that diagrammatically, because very interesting things happen when you look at the diagram for a monopsony, or the impact of a higher degree of monopsony power from the perspective of the monopsonist. So let's draw it. So as always, I want you guys, nice big diagram. Ooh, what? No, not like that. What? Like that. Like that. Quantity, cost/revenue, MC. Right, so again, step 1, MC. Step 2, we're going to draw AR, which is equal to demand. Marginal revenue is half of the slope. So like there. And then again, you go to the profit maximizing level of output where MC is equal to MR to get the output, Q1. You get the price by going up from that quantity until you hit the demand curve. That's the price there, Q1. And then you get the cost by going basically here. So you draw the AC curve like this, like that. And here we go. This is the cost for the firm, C1, and again, A and B. Cool, right. So again, if you're coming late onto TikTok, this is all being broadcast on YouTube as well, and you'll be able to see me drawing the diagram live. Right, okay. We just said that monopsony power, so if supermarkets like Tesco are exerting monopsony power, that means that they're driving down the prices they are paying suppliers, like the farmers. That does what to their variable cost? Well, it reduces their variable cost, easy. And if their variable costs go down, both MC and AC need to go down. Which one do I want you to shift first when both of them are shifting? You have to shift MC first. You have to. So I want you to shift the MC curve. And now, you know how in theme one we thought of shifts as like inwards and outwards? I don't want you to think of shifts as inwards and outwards anymore. I want it to be up or down. So now MC is going to go down. So we're going to draw it like this. And that's MC2. What do I now do? Now, some of you are probably screaming, oh, shift the AC curve down. No, not yet. No. What I now want you to basically now do is go get the new level of output. The new level of output, MC equals MR, is here. That's the output level. It's gone up. And I can get the new price because now I go up. Till I hit the demand curve. The price has gone down. Park that thought for a second. We're going to talk about that because it's interesting. The final thing now is AC does fall. So now I need to make sure two things though. First thing I want to do is I want to make sure I put my pen on the new MC curve, and that has to be the lowest point. So somewhere like here we'll do like that, AC2. And again, because I now know the output level, so basically Q2, you got from Q2 until you hit the AC curve, and this is C2. And this is D, and this is E. Okay, let's summarize what happened on the diagram because there's so much that I can describe here. First things first, the variable cost went down. So as a result, the price that Tesco are charging for their products goes down from P1 to P2. Their sales increase from Q1 to Q2. And their profits go up from area P1 ABC1 to area P2 DEC2. Now, often, by the way, I get the question of, but if both your prices and costs are going down, how do you know your profits are going up? There are two reasons why. One is even if your price and cost went down by the same amount, mine hasn't, my cost clearly goes down more than my price, but even if it had gone down by the exact same amount, you guys agree that they're selling more units, so they're straight away generating profit on these extra units over here, so that area there. But also the second thing was this, is that theoretically, one of the things you guys are expected to know, never prove, but you're expected to know, is that if I draw, so I'll come back to this diagram in a second, if I draw you guys, AR and MR, so here's AR, and here is MR. The point where MR equals 0, so the revenue maximizing level of output, this point here, whether it looks like it or not, that 1,000,000% is where elasticity is equal to the number 1. It is basically units elastic. Okay? Above that, elasticity is greater than 1, so it's elastic. And below it, it is less than 1, so it is inelastic. Okay. What does that mean then? That means that if you think about it, MC equals MR, as you can see on my diagram above over here, is always to the left of MR equals 0. It will never be unit elastic or inelastic. It will always be elastic. And if Tesco are operating at the elastic section of the demand curve, so they're operating here, A, it makes complete sense for them to reduce their price. Because by reducing their price, so if I go P down, demand doesn't just go up a little bit, it is elastic. There is a more than proportionate increase in demand. So therefore, they end up making more revenue. And if you think about it, if Tesco's revenue is rising and their costs are falling, obviously their profits are going up. Simple as that. Yeah? So anyways, I can now answer several questions. So if the question was the slightly harder one, like June 2012, Unit 3, 9C, about the factors that indicate or the degree of monopsony power, the first thing I'd be looking for is I'd go, okay, how many firms, big buyers are there? If the market is concentrated, then monopsony power is high. So obviously here, supermarkets, highly concentrated. So in that extract over there, the 3-firm concentration ratio, if I remember correctly, was 63.9%. There you go, bang. Monopsony power, therefore, is high. Number two, if there is evidence that the supplier's profits are going down. Think about it. If there is monopsony power, supermarkets are pushing down the price that they're paying for their produce. Therefore, if you're a seller, you're like a farmer, your profits are going down. and potentially some of these firms are actually starting to become loss making. They might even be shutting down. Anyways, the other thing that you could look for is if there's evidence that prices being charged to consumers are falling. Look at the diagram. Make sense? Because if there is a high degree of monopsony power, one of the benefits is the fact that you consumers are going to get lower prices. And again, June 2012, it was in the extract. It said that it was a benefit to consumers. Yeah, it said something like the margin squeeze with manufacturers. With manufacturers is shared with shoppers. There you go. Yeah, all of that is evidence of monopsony power. Cool. What are the factors that limit monopsony power or that suggest that monopsony power is not so high? Well, number one is the fact that, think about it in terms of, like, let's say supermarkets again. Can Tesco exert monopsony power over, let's say, Coca-Cola? Well, no. Why? Because Coca-Cola are a massive, massive seller. They're basically a monopoly, right? In other words, they might cancel each other out. If the firm that they're buying their produce from, or they're buying whatever it is from, are also big, then that basically will offset monopsony power. Cool? That's the first thing that I'd look for. Number two, another factor is, what could the suppliers do? The suppliers could merge. Because if the suppliers merge with one another, then again, that would restrict monopsony power, because it's harder for you to now dictate prices to them because they're a bigger firm. They have more monopoly power, basically, yeah? Again, from June 2012, it says, behind the push for a merger was a belief that a bigger, more diversified firm would not be so easily bullied by retailers. Something like that. That's your quote, by the way. That's an amazing application. That. Number three, if you're talking about profits falling for the suppliers, maybe that's not because of monopsony power. They might just not know how to run the business very well. And that point, by the way, is made even better if the extract gives you examples of other suppliers that are thriving. If there are other suppliers that are doing really, really well, then you go, look, this is like evidence that actually maybe not monopsony power that's causing them to experience like kind of the profits going down. This is just, they kind of suck. Again, June 2012. The extract was about a company called Northern Foods. And in the extract, it mentioned two other companies that were also suppliers, who were Kerry Group and Cranswick, and they were thriving. They're doing great. So you go, look, maybe profitability falling for Northern Foods isn't because of monopsony power. It's because they're just not running their business very well. Cool. Now that we've hopefully gone through an overview of monopsony, there are only 3 types of questions that they can ask about a monopsony. Let's answer all of them. The first I just did, which is the factors that basically dictate monopsony power. The second, sorry, it's 2 questions, not 3 questions. The second is to say, what is the impact of monopsony power? And they can only ask this in terms of 3 players. Player number 1 is the supplier, the farmer. Player, or whatever the supplier is. Player number 2 is the supermarket, Tesco, or the monopsonist. Player number 3 is us, the consumers. Let's deal with every single one of them one at a time. Let's start with the suppliers. Do you guys agree that if you're talking about the suppliers, their profits are going down because they cannot charge as high a price for their produce if they are subject to monopsony power? So their AR and MR are going down, they're making less profit. Some of them might even be shutting down. That's the analysis. Evaluation, one of 2 things. Either I could basically talk about, well, the suppliers might merge to limit monopsony power, so that might enable them to kind of survive. That's one. Or alternatively, I could talk about the CMA intervening and being like, oh, the CMA might step in and actually it's all good. They're not going to get abused to the point where they shut down. That is the suppliers, tick. Second one, let's deal with it from the perspective of the supermarket, Tesco. Well, from the perspective of the supermarket, we drill down. And we say that their variable costs go down, so what happens to their profits? Profits go up. Because if their costs are going down, they're making more profit, they're going to invest the profits, happy days for them. Eval to that, who's going to step in and be like, what in the world are you doing? CMA. The CMA, the regulator, might be like, no, you ain't allowed to do that. That, again, is how you answer it in terms of the supermarket, the monopsonist. Last player, us. Us. What happens to us? Again, diagram. You don't draw it twice, by the way. If you needed to draw it once. And now you basically say consumers might be better off because the prices they're being charged are going to go down. Cool. You talk about because variable costs are going down. You can explain the whole thing, by the way, from the perspective of Tesco, and then link it back to the consumer by saying, oh, it's good for consumers, though, because they're going to get a lower price, P1 to P2. Evaluation. Are we guaranteed to get a low price? Well, no, not really, because supermarkets, that industry is an oligopoly. Those oligopolists might instead form a cartel. That is how you answer that. I've answered it in every single way you can answer that now, yeah? June 2012, Unit 3, 9C. June 2017 has a question on there as well, a 10 marker, I believe, about the impact of monopsony power. Cool. Right. I said it would be the last topic, but can I do one last one? So there's a bonus one, even though I'm so tired. Here we go. I'm sure you guys are very tired as well. Right. Let me just have some water, and then let's go through one last thing. Government failure. I want you guys to know how to answer questions in relation to government failure. I need you guys to understand what it is and how to basically easily answer a question on it. The question that we're going to do is June 2014, Unit 1, old spec, question 10E. I'll open it up in a second. Before that, let's chat. What is government failure? Government failure is not to be confused with market failure, because market failure is where the free market fails to allocate resources efficiently. For example, if there is, let's say, external costs arising from whatever it is that someone's doing, like smoking or driving a diesel car or whatever, basically last year's 25 marker was about how to correct that. That is an example of market failure. Government failure is where the government intervened to try and correct a market failure, but they either create an unintended consequence, or like something happens that they didn't anticipate would happen, that's also bad, or they make the situation even worse. Let us deal with the question together. So stop share. And let's share the paper. Right, Unit 1, old spec. Yeah. So here we go. Unit 1, June 2014, question 10E. Let's go. Right, here we go. Hi, 10E, fun. Right, the question says this. With reference to the information provided and your own knowledge, to what extent might regulations on the sale of cigarettes and high taxes on tobacco result in government failure? Right, the extract is so helpful. There are a series of questions or series of points that I need you to always know as these are answers every time for government failure. But at the same time, by the way, it's also going to be very helpful that you've got data to support you. More often than not, by the way, if you guys have revised properly, you should know the answer before you've read the data. And the data just supports you in terms of just giving you evidence and application marks. You should already know the answer. Example, last year, 15 marker was about price discrimination. You should already know the answer to that, yeah? I didn't do it today, partly because I just think that the chances of it coming up 2 years in are a little bit slimmer, but it could, by the way. So obviously do revise it. But anyways, right, there's that. 15 marker for June 2022 was about contestable market theory. Again, you should already know. And again, there's a video, so I overly plug this, but like if you haven't seen our YouTube videos, you really need to watch some of those videos because it takes you through. These are the things to look for. Go look for that and find it in the data, and you're on your way. Anyways, right. This question, government failure, we need a bit of the data. So the data, to give you some context, a lot of what I needed to basically talk about was this. Extract C is all about tobacco smuggling and illegal activity and how people turn to the hidden economy, etc. Let's go. Government failure as a definition is going to be this. Government failure is where government intervention results in a net welfare loss compared to the free market solution. Cool? That is our starting point. Nice, easy definition. Our first analysis, every time you're asked about government failure, I guarantee you the government failure is going to be basically due to the government often taxing something or imposing restrictions like, I don't know, making it illegal for people to buy a certain good. What, therefore, do people switch to? They switch to the hidden economy, right? And if they switch to the hidden economy, there are several issues here. Number one, the first issue is, do you agree the government are losing out on tax revenue? That is a problem. Here, again, some real world knowledge. The government estimates to lose £2 billion a year in potential tax revenue. That ain't so good, right? So that's number one. Number two, though, a really clever point is, do you guys agree that if people are buying things in the hidden economy, those products are unregulated? It's not like, illegally smuggled drugs like cigarettes are going to be regulated. Therefore, the things that people consume may be even more harmful to them than normal kind of cigarettes. And here we go. We can talk about quotes. It may consist of even more harmful chemical compounds. Boom. First analysis. Easy. Yeah? Now, when it comes to writing your answers in an exam, I always need you guys to understand that the best way to let examiners know that you are evaluating is to use the word however. I know it's not fancy. I don't need your language to be fancy in the exam. You're not there to write like some poetry for us. I need you to make it simple. But look for the word however. Because the word however, your eye should be drawn to it. They often give you evaluations in the extracts. There you go. However, it's literally right there. And it says, some of the highest levels of smuggling were found in Spain and Italy, two countries with the lowest tax rates on tobacco. Okay. Therefore, is there a direct correlation between the government taxing cigarettes and there being activity on the hidden economy? Well, no, not really. Because if there's more smuggling taking place in countries with even lower tax rates than the UK, you're basically evaluating by saying, look, it's not the government's fault. This is not government failure. It is just, this is what happens in the market. The illegal activity would take place even if taxes were really, really low. Clear? That is your evaluation then for a question like that. Really straightforward to basically say, look, the government failure might not be due to government intervention. It would just be that it would occur even if the government didn't, even if it was free market basically, and the government didn't intervene at all, it would still be government failure. Second analysis. This is always going to be true. Indirect taxes, so things like VAT, a specific tax, or a tax on each unit of a good, indirect taxes are always regressive. What does that mean? Regressive means that it impacts low-income households more than it impacts high-income households, and this is why. So imagine the following. If I impose a tax of £5 on a packet of cigarettes, do you guys agree that £5 for someone who's a multimillionaire is like a drop in the ocean for them? They wouldn't even notice £5. £5 for someone on a minimum wage, though, is that significant? Well, that's pretty much half their hourly salary. Therefore, do you agree that this is going to have a much more profound impact on low-income households compared to high-income households? And therefore, government intervention, like a tax, widens income inequality. That point is already amazing. Let's make it even more amazing. And this is where you go, I know what the answer is. It's always going to be regressive, by the way, always. And then you just find evidence to make the point even better. Here you go. Here's your evidence. It says that the number of people who smoke, there you go. Tobacco smoking also remains much higher for low-income workers in manual occupations, 29% real-world knowledge for you, by the way, compared to higher income workers in professional and managerial occupations, 13%. In other words, this is going to make it worse. They're more addicted. Low-income households typically have more addictions, like cigarettes, like alcohol, and as a result, these taxes are going to massively widen income inequality. Government failure. Easy? As a backup, these are the two main points, by the way. I'd always do illegal smuggling and like hidden economy as my first analysis, and the second one about regressive taxation and all that. But as a backup, there's also unintended consequences. Unintended consequences is the idea that you intervene and it results in something that you hadn't anticipated happening in the market that is also bad. Example, let's say you've got a question about pollution permits. Pollution permits, the intention is to try and restrict the level of pollution in the economy, right? But the issue is that if it's so much of an increase in the cost for the firms who are subject to pollution permits, what might happen to some of those firms? Some of those firms might shut down. And if those firms shut down, do you agree that that creates job losses? Unintended consequence, government failure. Because government intervention led to those industries shutting down or those firms shutting down. As a result, that's government failure. Well, here you go. Government failure right at the bottom of the paragraph for you right there. It says, a smoking ban imposed in enclosed public spaces since 2017 has coincided with more than 1,500 pubs and bars closing down each year. Unintended consequence, government failure. Easy? Those are your analyses. Let's do the evaluation. Let's do like an amazing eval here. In order to do that, to wrap it up on a high, I want to share my screen again for you guys to see a cool diagram. So let's draw the diagram together. Right, I am shattered. And about you guys, I'm sure you guys are very tired as well, but hopefully this was helpful. I'll do another one next week for macro after your paper one exam. I'll announce the details soon. So you can email your questions in from now. But anyways, right. Oh, no, not cost slash, sorry. That's how tired I am. Cost slash benefits, because we're dealing with externalities. Right, again, big kind of heads up. Other exam boards require you guys to know, so AQA, EDUCAS, and OCR will require you guys to know 4 types of diagrams for externalities. Edexcel, for some reason, I don't know why, dumb it down to just 2 externality diagrams. You guys don't need to basically know difference between production and consumption externalities. You just do negative externalities, which will always be production for you guys at Edexcel, and consumption as, and positive externalities, which are going to be consumption for you guys, yeah? Anyways, in a nutshell, here we go. Let's therefore draw it from the Edexcel perspective. For those of you guys, by the way, that are not Edexcel, you'd be drawing a negative consumption externality, whereas Edexcel, don't worry about it. Here you go. So what we're going to do is this. Oh, I've gone back to, what happened? So annoying. Right, let's go draw it again. So we have the following technology. Cost slash benefits. Okay. This is the step-by-step that I wanted to go through. Again, there's a YouTube video for you guys to watch if you want to go through it. But essentially you go negative externality. Negative externality, is that to do with costs or benefits? Well, the word negative is obviously a bad thing, so costs. So we're going to draw 2 slightly pivoted upward sloping lines like this. 1, 2. I do not want you to label that straight away. I want you to basically go, here are my 2 cost lines. I therefore draw 1 downward sloping line because there will only be 1 downward sloping line when there are 2 upward sloping. But I can label that downward sloping line immediately because there's only 1 line. We're going to assume that the benefits are constant between the 2 players who are the private party and the social. basically everyone in society, yeah? The most awkward question, by the way, they've asked on this is, and it's the only time ever where they shifted, I'll deal with that in a second. Let's deal with this, yeah? Right, there's a video where I talk about how do you remember whether costs are upward sloping or benefits are upward sloping, because it's the most common misconception. The easiest way to remember it is in terms of your favorite chocolate bar. Think about your favorite chocolate bar in the exam, whatever that might be, unless it's Mars, in which case just I'm judging you, sit down in the corner, reflect upon your life, because that's a horrendous chocolate choice. But anyways, right, my favorite chocolate bar is a Kinder Bueno. Do you guys agree that if I got a Kinder Bueno right now, I would enjoy that Kinder Bueno a lot? Now imagine that someone gives me a second Kinder Bueno immediately. I would obviously like the Kinder Bueno, but not quite as much as that first Kinder Bueno. And then I get a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth. Yeah, whatever the threshold is, at a certain number, I'm going to be sick. It's disgusting. On that basis, really obviously, are my benefits getting higher and higher as I get more Kinder Buenos, or lower and lower? You guys agree that I get less and less benefit from each additional bar that I consume. Therefore, benefits must be downward sloping. They will always be downward sloping. And if you just remember that as an example in the exam, you can work it out. You just go, okay, Kinder Bueno or whatever chocolate it is, do I get more and more benefit or less and less benefit? Well, less and less benefit. Therefore, this is MPB, and it's going to be equal to MSB. Cool. Next step. Do you guys see that on the diagram now we have 2 points of intersection? It intersects here and it intersects over here. Let us dot down and across from these 2 points of intersection. So here, and it intersects here. Okie dokie. And now you ask a very simple question to yourself. Negative externality. Is that where we do too little or too much of something? Negative externalities always will be where you're doing too much. It's too much of a bad thing. Whereas positive is too little of a good thing. Like last year's 12 marker was about the external and private benefits of them providing online like platforms, like this, right? Where you learn stuff, yeah? Negative then, if it's too much, think about it logically. Which quantity is therefore the equilibrium quantity? Is it number one there, or number two, where I produce more? Obviously, if I'm doing too much of something, it must be the second quantity. Obviously, this is QE. And the price that goes with it is this, PE. The other quantity, by the way, I want you to label it as QSO to represent what's called the social optimum, the ideal point that we want to be at. This is QSO, and this is PSO. Now I know where the equilibrium is. Do you guys agree the equilibrium we worked out is at that point there? And can you see that only one of the two upward sloping lines, just this one, goes through it? This one doesn't go through it, yeah? The equilibrium is there, and that line that I've not labeled, 100% will always be a private line. Equilibrium in any externality diagram is where marginal private cost is equal to marginal private benefit every single time, every time. Therefore, if I now know that that is the equilibrium, that's obviously MPC there, simple as that. And therefore, the other one must be marginal social cost. Cool? The welfare loss triangle, you put your pen on the equilibrium. If you guys are other exam boards, you'll go up or down to connect. For Edexcel, you're just going up all the time. So you put your pen on the equilibrium, go up, and that, can you guys see that shaded area? That is my initial welfare loss. Okay, right. Cool, let's chat. So this is what the externality looks like, yeah? Now, if you look at the extract, rather than hopping back and forth, I can tell you guys, I have no life. I memorize papers off by heart. In figure, I think it was figure two. It basically has the cost, the kind of estimated cost of tobacco smoking on the UK economy. And it adds up to 13.7 billion pounds. What is that, by the way? That is the external cost, which is a lot, by the way. In other words, is there a market failure here that the government probably need to rectify? Well, obviously, yes. Tobacco smoking results in 13.7 billion pounds of external costs in the UK. So does the government need to intervene? Yeah, obviously, they need to intervene. And what should they do to intervene? Well, what they should do is impose a tax. Because if you think about what a tax diagram looks like, a tax diagram causes the supply to shift inwards. The cost of production for the manufacturer goes up, and so supply shifts inwards. And the supply curve on a diagram like this is marginal private cost. What I therefore want you to do on your diagram is this. You're going to go, look, the government, it is not only necessary to intervene, it is actually an effective form of intervention. And this is what we're going to do. You go to the equilibrium point there. And this is why I shifted, or I drew my diagram with the lines pivoted a little bit, gives me like room to maneuver. I put my pen there, and I'm going to draw a line going through. I'll try and fix it now. Parallel shift, hopefully it will fix itself. There we go, right through the social optimum there. And that is MPC plus tax. And now, I mean, I've missed it. Let's pretend it's sitting there I don't know, my technological skills are not good enough to like amend the diagram now. Imagine I'm at that point there. So I'm producing the social optimum, and the price that now people are paying for cigarettes has gone up to PSO, the social optimum price. What has the government done? The government has done my favorite sentence in theme one. I know that's really sad that I have a favorite sentence in theme one, but go with me. What you're going to write is this, is the effective attacks is to internalize the external cost associated with, in this case, tobacco consumption or cigarettes or smoke. Yeah. And that basically describes what we just did. If you want to smoke, okay, smoke, but you now have to pay a higher price. And you have to compensate society because now the government are going to generate tax revenue, which they can hypothecate. Fancy way of saying that they're going to take the tax revenue and spend it back on that actual problem. I don't know, running awareness campaigns to tell people about how stupid it is for them to smoke, or running, I don't know, spending more money on the NHS to basically make it, I don't know, on lung diseases and cancer-related illnesses, blah, 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 blah. That is the point. Right. Let's talk about this in terms of evaluation. Evaluation, if we're saying that government intervention was government failure, we now go, no, it's not government failure. The government intervention not only was necessary, it was successful. Because this is clearly a market failure that needs intervening. The external cost, as the extract states, or figure shows, £13.7 billion. And then if you look at figure one shows that the percentage of adults that smoke in Great Britain has fallen from 1974 to the year 2010 from approximately 45% of smokers to 20% smokers. Is it working? Yeah, it is working. Go, well, the government intervention is totally working here. Therefore, this is not government failure. This is like, I don't know what it is. It's not got a name. Like, it's a government success, but it's just that it's not government failure. That then is awesome evaluation. And that is how you answer a question in terms of government failure. You start off as analysis, why the intervention could result in government failure, like I did, and you evaluate it by talking about how, no, it's not government failure because there might be something else that's causing the market failure, or that particular issue is as a result of something else. Or the second evaluation is the government intervention is not only necessary, it is amazing. And it's working. Cool. Last bit of advice before I let you guys go to sleep. Right, so a few things. There are a couple of rules that I need you guys to understand and abide by. So let me unshare so you guys we can have a quick chat. So first things first. Amongst my students, I always have one rule in the exam. The one rule in the exam is that no matter what they ask, and sometimes they'll ask you awkward, weird questions, the one rule is that you are not allowed to miss a question or write nothing. Even if you feel like you know nothing, you should know by Wednesday the key definition for that particular concept. If there's a diagram, you basically draw the diagram, yeah? I need you to just answer it to the best of your ability and understand that in order to get an A star, it is not about getting full marks on every single question. That is not what an A star is. An A star is you clawing marks throughout the paper. Therefore, even if you get to a situation where you get a question where it's awkward and you're not sure how to answer it, like the 10-mark nationalisation question in the October paper, yeah, 2020. As long as you go, what is nationalisation? Can I try and at least attempt to answer it? Constantly bring it back to the question, by the way, when you're stuck. So go, as a result, this protects the employees. As a result, this is a natural monopoly. As a result, this is whatever the question is. This is why their profits go up because of, price discrimination. Blah, 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 yeah? That, I guarantee you will claw you a couple of marks. Just try your best. If you guys are struggling, trust me, everyone else in the country is struggling as well. And therefore, just give it your best shot, do your best. 2, timings. Now, those of you that have commented economics on any previous video, and you also need to follow us, by the way, for us to actually be able to send you the material. Do so if you haven't done so, and we'll send you the material. There is a mark guidance booklet, and in the mark guidance booklet, I basically lay out literally what I need you guys to do in terms of timing. Stick to it religiously. Stick to it like your life is on the line, yeah? You need to make sure that you stick, because timing-wise, this exam is so time pressured. I can't tell you how time pressured this exam is, yeah? Make sure that on questions like that 12 mark, if it's cost and only diagram, you save time by having practice diagrams. Know your definitions so quickly that you can just write them quickly, yeah? Stick to the timings. Don't allow yourself to go beyond the timings. And other than that, you guys hopefully will do unbelievably well. And hopefully I'll see you guys for the macro course probably next Saturday. Hopefully paper one goes really well for you guys. Adios. Bye-bye.